Well, good evening, kids. How's everybody doing? Welcome. Welcome to the special edition, special episode of The Abyss. We're doing a live commentary. That's right. The circus is in town again. The third Democratic debate. I thought I'd start a little bit earlier. According to the countdown, we got about 15 minutes here. So, 14 minutes and 44, 43, 42, 41. Oh, pardon me. Hopefully I won't die during the stream. Good evening, G. Gallon. How you doing? Special treat for all the bit waivers. Bitwave.tv. We're going to show that a little bit. I have the chat up. Please don't get me banned on YouTube, DLive, and Periscope. I'd appreciate that. Be merciful. I may sound a little like I have something in my throat. I was basically inhaling my dinner before the stream because I don't want to eat on stream because it's just gross to hear someone chew on the microphone. I've heard and seen other streamers do that, and it's just gross. Yeah, that's right, G Gallon. Like, why do you call it a debate when it's a give off? It essentially is. It's all rigged, essentially, in a sense. But it's fun to make fun of them and to make fun of their stupidity and their poor policy propositions. Yeah. So it's a good opportunity to look into the void that is the cult of the Democrats. Oh, we have the moderators coming in.
David Muir, Lindsay Davis, and Jorge Ramos.
Oh, Jorge Ramos. We have Jorge Ramos. Was it Stephanopoulos?
Good evening, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you for this great
The
welcome
Hobbit.
here at Texas Southern. We are so excited to be here. We're so excited for the debate. I can tell you guys are as well. And now I have to do my job. The candidates have asked us to please try to keep the cheers under control because it's hard for them to hear when you cheer, and it also takes their time away. So I know you're excited. We are too. But do your best to keep it under control.
TSU. I am excited.
All right, while they're trying to do the hyping and everything.
So it's great to be here in Houston. I know this is a difficult time. It's a difficult time for many Latinos. Vamos a hablar español en el debate también. Y nuestras voces se van a escuchar fuerte. Our voices are going to be heard.
You're in America, buddy. Please speak English. That's one thing that I never understood about the left. It's incredibly patronizing to do that. But anyways, let's not get into that right now. I just want to make, while they're making all the hyping and everything, the whole hype speeches and announcements and telling people not to cheer. I do want to make a couple quick announcements showing things like that. One thing, obviously, support us, support The Abyss, support me. Streamlabs.com/The Eternal Abyss. We got Julian Castro, whose brother docks people. Yep.
Former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
That's Robert, not Beta, but whatever, dude. Yes, sir, Disney. Pardon me. Oh, my throat's not clear.
California Senator Kamala Harris.
Ooh, Kamala did not get the cheers that Yang did. Ooh, did you hear that? Funky, funky.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Very interesting.
Former Vice
Hey,
President
Trainwave.
Joe Biden.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg.
All right, I'm going to try and minimize my interruptions, or if I am, I'm going to try and pause the stream because I don't want to talk over people. We're also going to have Spook join us a little later in the stream. We'll try and find a good spot for him to come in.
Ladies and gentlemen, your 10 candidates. Debate's going to start in just a couple minutes.
And you heard George
Hopefully I
Stephanopoulos
won't
say
die
it
during
right
the stream,
there.
good
We are
lord.
just minutes away from the Democratic debate right here on ABC. Matt, Dad, I want to start
I'm gonna
with
try
you
and
now.
lower
in
the
our
volume
lightning
just a
round.
little
This
so
will
I
be the
can
last round of the panel,
kinda
as we're
comment.
minutes away from this debate. Matt, you told me earlier there's a lot of big, bold ideas from the Democrats we're seeing here on stage, but you said tonight candidates need to connect with
I love how
people
they
and
keep
voters on a
pushing those
personal level.
keywords.
In the end, this race is not going to be decided on ideology. It's going to be decided on how people link up with these voters in their culture that they're in. And so to me, this debate is much more about tone, much more about energy, much more about connection than it is some policy specifics that they may argue.
Ram, Vice President Joe Biden made one of his final moves before the debate starts to show a video of him basically
Pardon me.
bear hugging President Obama. Smart move. Why is he
I
doing
think he
that?
also got a hug back.
Hot market?
Okay. But no, yeah, it's a smart move. It's his calling card. It's why he has the strength he has among Democratic voters, is because he served with a very, very popular president. It's what surprised me in the last
Yeah,
debate.
very popular
when people
president.
were throwing the president under the bus. I mean, you have a person who's at 90-some-odd% popularity with Democrats. That is not a smart strategy. I do agree with Matt. This is going to be about the energy. There's more about a chemistry that you're going to associate. And the closer the candidate can put their own story with the story of where people live their lives,
Mic
they're
is too low?
the better they're going to be. They're not going to follow all the details about this policy versus that policy. It's about relating, and they feel
What do you mean?
that they can relate to that candidate and that they understand.
Oh no,
them
that's
where they
another
live their
channel.
lives.
I'm
Yvette
seeing
Simpson,
Sykes
break it down
chats
for
there.
us. Why
My
has
bad.
Elizabeth Warren been really the only one who has caught fire recently? What is she doing right?
You know, we predicted this.
Well, because
right?
he
She
was
the
vice
one,
president,
unlike
that's why.
Biden, unlike Bernie, who already had a lot of name ID. Like, people knew her, but they didn't really know her. And now she's getting out there, and people are getting to know her, her energy, her ideas, the fact that she connects personally. These are
Yeah,
all
Rahm
the things we
Emanuel.
talked about that people want to see. And so
It's
she's got a lot of
hilarious that they
energy.
give
She
Rahm
knows
Emanuel
how to talk to
any
people
sort of
and say,
credence
"I
and
got
even a
plan for
platform to
that.
talk on. I mean,
I'm
this
gonna show you how
guy
I'm gonna do it."
destroyed
People want real
Chicago.
solutions right now.
Chicago
People are suffering.
was
We
already
talked about
bad.
this.
This guy
Healthcare
came in, he
costs are
turned it
rising.
into a
People are
trash
concerned
heap.
about climate. She's got answers on it, and not only that, but she connects it to the heart. And I think that's really why she's seeing a lot of momentum right now.
Senator Heitkamp, if you're fighting for your life tonight, do you need to go on the attack?
Sorry,
or do you
adjusting my
come out with
microphone a
big
little bit
idea?
here.
No, I think ideas aren't what's going to win it. You need to show that you can command that stage with President Trump. This is a casting call for the Democratic candidate who is going to do the best job against Donald Trump, and that candidate is going to be somebody who is going to have the image of presidential capability and be able to stand up to Trump and actually win a debate against that president.
So basically, she's saying it doesn't matter if they have good or bad ideas. It's barely. It's basically, let's see if he can who can beat Trump, and that's it.
Devin, you're on the trail. Is that what voters are telling you? They want to hear how this Democrat can beat President Trump?
Yeah, they want to hear the truth, Tom. In fact, you know, the past few days as we've been reporting around the suburbs here in Houston, they want what everyone said here. They want authenticity. They want direct answers. They don't want the spin. They can see through it. And, you know, Thomas Friedman, the oldest debate coach of any HBCU, gave an interview with us today. He's 100 years old, been teaching debate here for 70 years. He said the secret to being a good debater is devotion to the truth. Not winning the argument, but telling the truth. And I think that's what I've heard from voters.
And if you can't do that, fake it.
Or that. Fake it till
No,
you make
there is. Listen, I mean, President Clinton got the kid from Hope, and his story was relatable to where people were living their lives. President Obama was about the audacity of hope and what his candidacy embodied and what it meant for them in the country. And it is very important to relate to people and be relatable, where they can understand what is in here. They're going to pull the hood up, and we've seen it. All of us who've been helping candidates or run our.
In where? Where were you pointing, Ram? We couldn't see. What are you talking about? When it comes to Clinton, that needs to be specified, sir. Sir, please specify where you were pointing.
themselves. People are going to, the voters that are watching tonight and thinking about becoming Democrats in this upcoming election, they're going to see what moves this. Not just the ideas, but what motivates that idea. Not just what that policy is to that problem, but why do you want to care about that? Why did you put that at the top of the list?
Mary Bruce, I want to go to you. You've been on the campaign trail as well, and something that strikes me that sort of stands.
Oh, of course it's not. It's not about Israel. You know, Troll 6824 is saying here that it shows you that their agenda is less about Israel and more about replacement migration. Trump could give Israel half our military gear, and these efforts would still be all about getting rid of him. Their whole point is getting rid of Trump. That's it. That's really it. They don't care about anything else. Hi, Meave. How you doing?
Out to me, you have all these bold plans, these big ideas. You have candidates who talk about a generational shift, yet the three top-tier candidates are all in their 70s.
It is surprising, given especially so much focus on younger voters, and yet you do. The top three candidates in the polls are all septuagenarians, and they are also getting some criticism for their age. It's one of the top questions, an issue that often comes out when you're talking with voters is, do they feel that these candidates can relate to them, can relate to younger voters, given this generational divide? But clearly it isn't hurting them in the polls.
I'm going to try and not pause that much because this is going to be a very long debate. So I'm going to try and not pause. And, yeah, I'm covering the debate, Meave. Welcome.
I have to tell you, though, Tom, this is a fairly young crowd, and they are pretty rowdy and fired up here. It's pretty remarkable, I think. We were talking about the loudest chants that we heard actually were for the hometown candidates, Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely.
I'm curious to see who will seize this particular moment, this particular place, right? There have been 3 mass shootings since the last debate, 2 in Texas. Gun control tonight. The racial divide in America. We're at one of the largest historically black colleges in the country and one of the most diverse cities in America. Who will seize upon those 2 things?
Look, I'm wishing the moderators good luck, too.
You've done this.
Trying to keep this crowd quiet because so far they're pretty enthused and pretty excited about this tonight. It's one thing that I would say that we should all watch for, too. I know all those candidates are going to try and get the attention of the moderator in some way or another. It might be an eye roll. It might be raising the hand. We've seen this before. But the moderators have to kind of keep the peace there and figure out how to handle it.
And we're all expecting that big moment, you know, Warren versus Biden, Bernie versus Biden, the 2 of them ganging up on Biden. But I'll tell you, one word of caution here is the Democratic voters, you're out there talking to them almost every day. They want somebody that's going to take the fight to Donald Trump. They don't like the infighting among Democrats.
And you mentioned those 3 top contenders, the top tier right now. It's also those folks on the side, the flanks that we really have to watch. They need a moment. Castro needs a moment tonight. Harris definitely needs a moment. There's a lot on the line for her. She came out on fire after that first debate. Her poll numbers shot up, her endorsements shot up, her money shot up, and then she just sort of dropped and fell flat. She really needs to stay in this race for her. It's do or die right now.
There were loud applause for Beto O'Rourke, who's the hometown guy, right, from El Paso. But
Dispatch, what are you doing?
Say, if you don't do well tonight,
the candidates on the wings, they want that moment, but they do have to pick that moment carefully because as we
Hey, Cocaine Mitch, how you doing, my man?
You make too many attacks against one of the front runners, it can backfire. And then you have to be ready to capitalize on any big moment that you've had. We saw that with Harris, as you mentioned. She had that boost, but her campaign hasn't really been able to sustain it going forward.
They have to turn that moment into momentum, and some of them have been unable to do that. And that's what they're trying to do. And try to inspire, really try to reach people. And not just can you fight
Don't break my chat, Dispatch. That's not going to be fun. Come on, man.
do they think can do that?
And differentiate yourself. That's the big factor tonight for so many of these folks on the stage.
So much for us to be keeping a close eye on. Well, the stage is set. The field has been narrowing slowly. Everyone down here is getting ready. Tom, back to you.
Thanks so much. Last final thoughts. What are you guys hoping to see tonight?
Well, the pass the torch arguments stick, Tom. We saw it in the first debate. The millennials and the Gen X candidates have been hanging out in the wings. Can they resurrect that argument?
I think that you're going to have 2 debates, not 1 debate. You're going to have obviously what will focus on the energy of Biden and Warren, but who's going to fill
energy
that
of
third seat? And there's a lot of candidates for that.
Did he just say energy of Biden? Did he seriously say energy of Biden? I think he's serious about that. Biden looks like a living corpse. The guy has like 0 energy. He's in the negative numbers when it comes to energy.
And can the outliers put more fuel in the tank to survive after tonight?
So much at stake. The 10 candidates for the first time on a single stage. Vice President Joe Biden, Senator
Oh my
Elizabeth
God.
Warren, also Senator Bernie.
Chat is going crazy. What are you doing with the emotes, man?
It's just about to start. The candidates have taken to the podium right now.
All right, we
less
are a
than
minute away. It's
from
going to
all this
start. Here we
action
go,
happening
kids.
Right on ABC News.
Get your
and of course
popcorn
on
ready.
ABC News Live, Hulu streaming all across the world tonight. For one of the first times in the world, people can watch on their app and watch every moment by moment. Also a reminder, we have a big post-debate show as well with this powerhouse panel.
Yeah, I don't care about your post-debate show.
Correspondents up
Because I'll have my own, maybe. I don't know.
all the action that's happening there on the stage. And of course, we will be talking to the candidates live.
Ooh, who wants to start putting wagers down at what time frame in the debate Biden's going to start shooting blood out of his eyeball? Anybody want to put down some money on that? I'm willing to take wagers at this point.
Room, the debate hall. Chief anchor George Stephanopoulos, he is 15 seconds away from a major night in politics. We thank you.
More like geriatric Xers. What does he shoot then if it's not blood? Oh my God. Dispatch is just trying to destroy chat.
Only the top 10 candidates are here. Our Democratic primary debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special.
I will be a president for every American.
No, you won't.
This is our moment.
No,
We
it's
are
not.
in a struggle for the future of this country.
You're trying to destroy the
fight
future.
for our country. That's the nature of who we are.
You don't know the nature.
Right now, we can act. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation. We have overcome worse times and darker moments than this. We will make the most of this moment that we have here together.
We are on a march together.
We're going to win by being bold. We're going to win by being fearless.
Live from Texas Southern.
And we're going to win by doxing everybody that donates to our political opponents because we want to target them and persecute them.
Welcome to Houston. We are live from Texas Southern University for tonight's Democratic debate. The top 10 candidates are here. It's going to start right now. And on the stage, you see them.
God.
They have all met the criteria set by the Democratic National Committee. At least 10 others have not met the threshold. So for the first time in this primary, a single debate in a single night with all the top candidates facing off. It is a critical test for the candidates and their campaigns at a critical time for our country. They're going to lay out their vision for the country, their records, their differences with President Trump and each other. And we're going to do our best to bring you a lively, informative, and civil debate. I'm joined here tonight by my ABC colleague, World News Tonight anchor David Muir, our national correspondent Lindsay Davis, and Jorge Ramos from our partner network, Univision. Jorge?
George, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to welcome Latinos across the country and to ask about Latinx issues during these challenging times. En este país también se habla español. Este debate se realiza en un momento muy difícil para los latinos en Texas y en todo Estados Unidos, pero es importante que ellos sepan, que sepamos que este también es nuestro país. Let me just give you a little translation here. I'm telling Latinos that despite the fact that we are facing difficult times, this is our country too.
Only if you're in here legally.
To be on the beautiful campus of
And if you're an
Texas
actual citizen, if you
Southern
naturalized.
University, one of the
Yes.
largest historically
You'll be
black
an American,
colleges and
but if you're not
universities in the
naturalized, you're not an American, buddy.
Here in the Health and Physical Education building tonight, we are joined by a live audience of 3,500 people, most invited by the Democratic National Committee, and of course, some of the brightest minds of the
Most
student body
invited, of
here
course.
at TSU.
Who else would be there?
We can feel the energy in the room, can't we, Lindsay? The rules of this debate are very basic tonight and have been agreed to by all the campaigns in advance. Candidates will have 1 minute, 15 seconds to answer a direct question and 45 seconds for a rebuttal or response, as directed by one of the moderators. Candidates will each see green and yellow lights, there you see them right there, indicating how much time they have remaining. And when time is up, the light will turn red. Candidates who interrupt will be subject to having their time reduced later on. But this is democracy, the great American experiment, and the candidates are here tonight.
They're actually going to reduce the time of people who interrupt. Ho ho.
Based on their current standings in nationally recognized polls with the leading candidates in the center. All candidates have been told they can have 1 minute to make an opening statement, and we're going to begin in reverse polling order with Secretary Julian Castro.
Good evening. Y bienvenidos a Texas. Welcome to Texas. It's great to be here at TSU, home of the Tigers. You know, on January 20th, 2021, at 12:01 p.m., we're going to have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate.
Dream on, buddy.
It will be life after Donald Trump. But the truth is that our problems didn't start just with Donald Trump, and we won't solve them by embracing old ideas. We need a bold vision. Universal pre-K and universal health care, unleashing millions of new jobs in the clean energy economy, a tax system that rewards people who have to work for a living. But first we have to win, and that means exciting a young, diverse coalition of Americans who are ready for a bold future. That's what Kennedy did. It's what Carter did. It's what Clinton did. It's what Barack Obama did. And it's what I can do in this race. Get back Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Florida, Georgia, and Arizona, and finally turn Texas blue and say goodbye to Donald Trump.
Dream on, buddy.
Senator Klobuchar.
Good evening, Texas Southern. I believe that what unites us up here, the 10 of us, is much stronger than what divides us. And I think that's true of our country, too. Now, I may not be the loudest person up here, but I think we've already got that in the White House. Houston, we have a problem. We have a guy there that is literally running our country like a game show. He would rather lie than lead. I think we need something different. I am someone that tells the truth. I don't make promises that I can't keep. I have people's back, and I believe that to win, you bring people with you, and that is how you govern as well. So you're going to hear a lot of ideas up here. Some will be great, but if you see...
Does eating salad with a fork also count as leadership? Just asking, yeah, for reference.
That some of them seem a little off track, I've got a better way. If you feel stuck in the middle of the extremes in our politics and you are tired of the noise and the nonsense, you've got a home with me. Because I don't want to be the president for half of America. I want to be the president for all of America.
You won't be the president of any America, lady.
Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
It's an honor to be on this debate stage. It is wonderful to be back in Texas, in Houston, back here at TSU. On August 3rd, in El Paso, Texas, two things became crystal clear for me and I think produced a turning point for this country. The first is just how dangerous Donald Trump is, the cost and the consequence of his presidency. A racism and violence that had long been a part of America was welcomed out into the open and directed to my hometown of El Paso, Texas, where 22 people were killed, dozens more grievously injured by a man carrying a weapon he should never have been able to buy in the first place, inspired to kill by our president. The second is how insufficient our politics is to meet the threat that we have right now. The bitterness.
Yeah, it's very insufficient when all you're doing is scapegoating, vilifying, accusing people of being uncaring, and you're not proposing anything except for fascistic registries and confiscation. How is that supposed to resolve anything, Beto?
The pettiness, the smallness of the moment, the incentives to attack one another and try to make differences without distinctions, mountains out of molehills. We have to be bigger. We have to see clearly. We have to speak honestly, and we have to act decisively. That's what I want to do for you as President of the United States. Thank you.
Senator Cory Booker.
It was over 20 years ago that I was a law student and moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey to serve as a tenants' rights lawyer to try to address the challenges in my community. And I was sobered by them, the gun violence, the substandard housing. But it was my greatest mentor, a woman named Miss Virginia Jones, who challenged me. She said, boy, if all you see in this neighborhood is problems, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're stubborn and defiant and can put forth a vision that can unify people, then we can make transformative change. She was a church woman that said, without vision, the people will perish. Well, that's exactly what we did. We created extraordinary unity in our community, and we did things that other people thought was impossible. That's the story of America. At our best, we unify. We find common cause and common purpose. The differences amongst us Democrats on the stage are not as great as the urgency for us to unite as a party, not just to beat Donald Trump, but to unite America in common
Yeah, I suppose I could just speak over them.
common purpose. That's why I'm running for president, and that's how I will lead this nation.
Entrepreneur Andrew Yang.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty
hell was that?
dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine. When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Get our country working for us again, the American people.
That's electoral fraud. You can't buy votes. He's buying votes. You can't do that.
It's original, I'll give you that. The American people are divided and doubtful at the very moment we need to rise to some of the greatest challenges we've ever seen. As a mayor of an industrial city coming back from the brink, as a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, I know what's at stake in our national leadership. We keep sending politicians to Washington, asking them to fight for us, but then when they get there, they seem more interested in the part about fighting than the part about us. Good politics is supposed to be not about the day-to-day fights of the politicians, but about the day-to-day lives of Americans. We just marked the anniversary of 9/11. All day today, I've been thinking about September 12th, the way it felt when for a moment we came together as a country. Imagine if we had been able to sustain that unity. Imagine what would be possible right now with ideas that are bold enough to meet the challenges of our time, but big enough as well that they could unify the American people. That's what presidential leadership can do. That's what the presidency is for, and that is why I'm asking for your vote.
Senator Kamala Harris.
Thank you.
I saw it, Nexus. I saw.
So I plan on spending tonight talking with you about my plans to address the problems that keep you up at night. But first, I have a few words for Donald Trump, who we all know is watching. So President Trump, you've spent the last 2.5 years full-time trying to sow hate and division among us.
No.
And that is why we've got nothing done. You have used hate, intimidation, fear, and over 12,000 lies as a way to distract from your failed
all
policies
lies,
and
horizontal
your broken
Harris, all
promises.
lies.
The only reason you've not been indicted is because there was a memo in the Department of Justice that says a sitting president cannot be charged with a
That is
crime.
not true.
But here's
that
what
is
you
not
don't
true.
get.
Mueller specifically said that
What
was
you
not
don't
true.
get is that the American people are so much better than this.
She's
And
such a
we
freaking
know that
liar.
The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, regardless of our race, where we live, or the party with which we're registered to vote. And I plan on focusing on our common issues, our common hopes and desires, and in that way unifying our country, winning this election, and turning the page for America. And now, President Trump, you can go back to watching Fox News.
And that's supposed to be presidential material? Really? That's supposed to be presidential material right there.
Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders.
Let me be blunt and tell you what you don't hear much about in Congress
Good Lord.
or in the media. and that is, it goes without saying that we must and will defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in the history of this country. But
That was Obama.
do more. We must do more. We have got to recognize that this country is moving into an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this country. And as president, I am prepared to take them on. Yes, we will raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Yes, we will finally make sure that every American has health care as a human right, not a privilege. And yes, we will address the catastrophic crisis of climate change and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
Destroying the economy in the process and taxing the bejesus out of people.
So I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All three of my brothers served in military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about a half mile down the road from here.
Pretending she's Indian.
University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year degree and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids. And when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today,
Untrue.
members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken, I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Are you going to have tomahawks with you when you go to fight it and defeat it and fix it?
You know, when President Kennedy announced the moonshot, he used a phrase that sticks with me my whole life. He said, we're doing it because we refuse to postpone. Well, I refuse to postpone one more minute, spending billions of dollars on curing cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases, which if we invest in them, we can find cures. I refuse to postpone giving every single child in America, no matter their zip code, pre-K all the way through.
Man, he's slurring already. Woo!
I refuse to postpone any longer taking on climate change and leading the world in taking on climate change. Look, this is the United States of America. There's never been a single solitary time when we've set our mind to something we've been unable to do it. We're walking around with our heads down like, woe is me. We're the best equipped nation in the world to take this on. It's no longer time to postpone. We should get moving. There's enormous, enormous opportunities once we get rid of Donald Trump.
Candidates, thank you. Several of you said you are more united than divided, and that is certainly true. All of you agree on one big thing, the goal of defeating President Trump, driving the country in a new direction. But out on the campaign trail, you have outlined big differences over how far to go and how fast to go. And Vice President Biden, the differences between you and the senators on either side of you tonight strike at the heart of this primary debate. Both Senators Warren and Sanders want to replace Obamacare with Medicare for all. You want to build on Obamacare, not scrap it. They propose spending far more than you to combat climate change and tackle student loan debt, and they would raise more in taxes than you to pay for their programs. Are Senators Warren and Sanders pushing too far, beyond where Democrats want to go and where the country needs to go?
That'll be for the voters to decide that question. Let me tell you what I think. I think we should have a debate on health care. I know that the senator says she's for Bernie. Well, I'm for Barack. I think the Obamacare worked. I think the way in which we add to it, replace everything that's been cut, add a public option, guarantee that everyone will be able to have affordable insurance, number one. Number two, I think we should be in a position of taking a look at what costs are. My plan for health care costs a lot of money. It costs $740 billion. It doesn't cost $30 trillion. 3.4 trillion a year, it turns out, is twice what the entire federal budget is. That's before it exists now, without interest on the debt. How are we going to pay for it? I want to hear tonight how that's happened. So as far, my distinguished friend, the senator on my left, has not indicated how she pays for it. And the senator has, in fact, come forward and said how he's going to pay for it, but he gets about halfway there. There's a lot of other things that need to be done.
Oh, boy, wow. He's going for the jugular.
Deal with making sure we triple the money for at-risk schools that are Title I schools from 15 to $45 billion a year. But I go down the line, and each of the things we're talking about, I lay out how I can pay for it, how I can get it done, and why it's better.
Senator Warren, let me take that to you, particularly on what Senator Biden was saying there about health care. He's actually praised Bernie Sanders for being candid about his health care plan. That Senator Sanders has been candid about the fact.
Notice he didn't say Warren's name. I think he forgot her name.
Most of private insurance is going to be eliminated. Will you make that same admission?
So let's be clear about health care, and let's actually start where Vice President did. We all owe a huge debt to President Obama, who fundamentally transformed healthcare in America and committed this country to healthcare for every human being.
Fundamentally screwed it all up, yeah.
And now the question is, how best can we improve on it? And I believe the best way we can do that is we make sure that everybody gets covered by health care at the lowest possible cost. How do we pay for it? We pay for it. Those at the very top, the richest individuals and the biggest corporations, are going to pay more. And middle-class families are going to pay less. That's how this is going to work.
There's no fiscal way that's possible.
Will middle-class taxes go up to pay for the program? I know you believe.
Oh, hell yes, they will.
And the premiums will go down. Will middle-class taxes go up? Will private insurance be eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost. Total cost.
Notice how she's not answering.
That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist. Every time an insurance company says, sorry, that doctor is out of network. Sorry, we are not covering that prescription. Families are paying every time they don't get a prescription filled because they can't pay for it. They don't have a lump checked out because they can't afford the copay.
This is so ridiculous. This is just ridiculous rhetoric talking points.
What's going to happen in families' pockets? What's going to happen in their budgets? And the answer is, on Medicare for All, costs are going to go up for wealthier individuals, and costs are going to go up for giant corporations. But for hardworking families across this country, costs are going to go down, and that's how it should work.
That's what Obama promised with Obamacare. It ain't going to happen. Fiscally, these people don't understand. They don't understand anything.
Joe said that Medicare for All would cost over $30 trillion. That's right, Joe. Status quo over 10 years will be $50 trillion. Every study done shows that Medicare for All is the most cost-effective approach to providing health care to every man, woman, and child in this country. I, who wrote the damn bill, if I may say so, intend to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, all deductibles, all co-payments. Nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs because we're going to stand up to the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. We need.
And do you not think that if you do it all by government control, that the companies aren't going to milk you for every single freaking red commie cent that you have? Are you really this stupid, Bernie? Are you really this stupid? Please tell me you're not this stupid. Well, maybe you are, but anyways, let's move on.
We need a healthcare system that guarantees healthcare to all people, as every other country does, not a system which provides $100 billion a year in profit for the drug companies and the insurance companies. And to tell you how absurd the system is, tonight on ABC, the healthcare industry will be advertising, telling you how bad Medicare for All is because they want to protect their profits. That is absurd.
Vice President Biden,
respond,
you
George.
You get a response, then we're going to broaden out the discussion.
Okay, number one, my health care plan does significantly cut the cost of it. The largest out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000. You'll be able to get into anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare type option we have, et cetera. But guess what? Of the 160 million people who like their health care now, they can keep it. If they don't like it, they can leave.
Oh, boy.
Number one. Number two.
Oh,
The fact of
boy.
the matter is, we're in a situation where, if you notice, he hadn't answered the question. This is about candor, honesty, big ideas. Well, let's have a big idea. The tax of 2% that the senator's talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a deductible in your paycheck. You're going to, the middle class person, someone making 60 grand with 3 kids, they're going to end up paying $5,000 more. They're going to end up paying 4% more on their income tax. That's a reality. Now, it's not a bad idea.
Wow, he's actually tearing Bernie and Warren apart.
Keep the time, but you did invoke both senators. I have to get responses from them, then we will broaden out.
Good.
Senator Warren, you go first.
So let's be clear. I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company. I've met people who like
what bull crap.
I've met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their pharmacists. I've met people who like their physical therapists. What they want is access to health care. And we just need to be clear about what Medicare for All is all about. Instead of paying premiums into insurance companies and then having insurance companies build their profits by saying no to coverage, we're going to do this by saying everyone is covered by Medicare for All, every health care.
Yeah, but Medicare is garbage.
In terms of difference is where to send the bill.
Senator Sanders.
Let us be clear, Joe. In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
This is America.
Yeah, but Americans don't want to pay twice as much as other countries. And they guarantee health care to all people. Under my Medicare for All proposal, when you don't pay out of pocket and you don't pay premiums, maybe you have run into people who love their premiums. I haven't. What people want is cost-effective health care. Medicare for All will save the average American substantial sums of money on his or her health care bill.
That will not. That'll actually raise costs, reduce quality.
People stuck in the middle of the extremes. Who represents the extreme on this stage?
I think you know that I don't agree with some of these proposals up here, George. So I'm talking
Which
about
ones?
if I could respond to some of the proposals from my friends. First of all, Senator Sanders and I have worked valiantly to bring down the cost of pharmaceuticals. That was a Klobuchar-Sanders amendment to allow for drugs to come in from less expensive countries like Canada. We have worked to bring down the cost by fighting to allow 43 million seniors, that's a bill I lead, to negotiate for better prices under Medicare. I figure that's a lot of seniors and they should be allowed to get a better price. But when it comes to our health care and when it comes to our premiums, I go with the doctor's creed, which is do no harm. And while Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill. And on page 8, of the bill, it says that we will no longer have private insurance as we know it. And that means that 149 million Americans will no longer be able to have their current insurance. That's in 4 years. I don't think that's a bold idea. I think it's a bad idea. And what I favor is something that what Barack Obama wanted to do from the very beginning, and that is a public option, a nonprofit choice that will bring down the cost of insurance, cover 12 million more people, and bring down the prices for 13 million more people.
Yeah, but guess what, Combs salad eater? Obama tried that and it failed. It failed horribly.
Will lose their health insurance.
I'm sorry.
She said page 8 of the bill, 149 people will lose their health insurance.
Look, current health insurance.
149 million.
Million, excuse me.
So let's be clear about this.
Oh my God.
People will have
Can you
access
stop saying that?
to all of their doctors, all of their nurses, their community hospitals, their rural hospitals. Doctors won't have to hire people to fill out crazy forms. They won't have to spend time on the phone arguing with insurance companies. People who have sick family members won't have to get into these battles. What this is about is making sure that we have the most efficient way possible to pay for health care for everyone in this country. Insurance companies last year sucked $23 billion in profits out of the system. How did they make that money? Every one of those $23 billion was made by an insurance company saying no to your health care coverage.
Mayor Buttigieg.
The problem, Senator Sanders, with that damn bill that you wrote and that Senator Warren backs is that it doesn't trust the American people. I trust you to choose what makes the most sense for you, not my way or the highway. Now, look, I think we do have to go far beyond tinkering with the ACA. I propose Medicare for all who want it. We take a version of Medicare, we make it available for the American people, and if we're right, as progressives, that that public alternative is better, then the American people will figure that out for themselves.
But it won't be better.
Make the right choice for them. Why don't you?
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds.
George, you talked about, was it 150 million people on private insurance? 50 million of those people lose their private insurance every year when they quit their jobs or when they go unemployed or their employer changes their insurance policy. Medicare
Not exactly, but whatever.
comprehensive health care, covers all basic needs, including home health care. It allows you to go to any doctor you want, which many private insurance company programs do not. So if you want comprehensive health care, freedom of choice regarding doctor or hospital, no more than $200 a year for prescription drugs, taking on the drug companies and the insurance companies, moving to Medicare for all is the way to go.
Senator Harris, you started out
I don't think he's going to make it throughout the end of this whole debate. Good Lord.
I want to give credit first to Barack Obama for really bringing us this far. We would not be here if he hadn't the courage, the talent, or the will to see us this far. I want to give credit to Bernie. Take credit, Bernie. You brought us this far in Medicare for All. I support Medicare for All, I always have, but I wanted to make the plan better, which I did, which is about offering people choice, not taking that from them. So under my Medicare for All plan, people have the choice of a private plan or a public plan because that's what people want. And I agree we shouldn't take choice from people. But here's the thing. Everybody on this stage, I do believe, is well-intentioned and wants that all Americans have coverage and recognizes that right now 30 million Americans don't have coverage. But at least 5 people have talked, some repeatedly, on this subject, and not once have we talked about Donald Trump. So let's talk about the fact that Donald Trump came into office and spent almost the entire first year of his term trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
Because it's bad.
And then the late, great John McCain, at that moment at about 2 o'clock in the morning, killed his attempt to take health care from millions of people in this country.
Because McCain's a traitor.
And what is happening? Donald Trump's Department of Justice is trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Donald Trump's
As they should.
administration is trying to get rid of the ban that we placed on denying people who have pre-existing conditions coverage.
That's not
Donald
true.
Trump is trying to say that our kids up to the age of 26 can no longer be on our plans. And frankly, I think this discussion has given the American public a headache. What they want to know is that they're going to have health care and cost will not be a barrier to getting it. But let's focus.
I do love the fact that everybody that talks about healthcare, they don't talk about the quality of healthcare. They only talk about number of people covered. Nobody gives a crap if it's actually good quality healthcare.
You want an option. The option I'm proposing is a Medicare for all, in a Medicare for choice. If you want Medicare, if you lose the job from your insurance company, from your employer, you automatically can buy into this. You don't have no pre-existing condition can stop you from buying in. You get covered, period. And if you notice, nobody's yet said how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. I hear this large savings. The president my friend from Vermont thinks that the employer is going to give you back if you negotiate his union all these years, got a cut in wages because you got insurance. They're going to give back that money to the employee?
Matter of fact, they will.
Well, let me tell you something. For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
Senator Sanders.
1 minute, George.
Go ahead.
All right. 2 points.
Yep.
You got to defend the fact that today, not only do we have 87 million people uninsured and underinsured, you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt. You know why they're going bankrupt?
Did his number just go up of how many people were uninsured?
Cancer or heart disease. Under my legislation, people will not go into financial ruin because they suffered with a diagnosis of cancer. And our program is the only one that does that.
I know a lot about cancer. Let me tell you something. It's personal to me. Let me tell you something. Every single person who is diagnosed with cancer or any other disease can automatically become part of this plan. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They can join immediately. And we're talking 4, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on who you talk about, before we get to Medicare for all. Come on. I've been there. You've been there. You know what it's like. People need help now, hope now, and do something now.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Yeah. Thank you. Listen, I'm grateful that we all agree about the urgency of this challenge and the fact that Donald Trump is undermining the limited protections that we have.
He's not undermining it.
I also think we're being offered a false choice between those who propose an all-or-nothing gambit, forcing tens of millions off of insurance that they like, that works for them, to force them onto Medicare, and others who want to, as a vice president does, incrementally improve what we have, which will still leave many, maybe millions, uninsured and uncared for in a state like Texas, where the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. We've got to do better. In my proposal, Medicare for America says everyone who's uninsured will be enrolled in Medicare. Everyone who's insufficiently insured, cannot afford it, can move over to Medicare. And those, like members of unions who fought for the health care plans that work for them and their families, are able to keep them. That is the best.
Yeah, but define uninsured now. See, that's the thing. They throw these buzzwords out. They could define anything as uninsured, underinsured.
Andrew Yang, and then Senator Booker, you all get a minute.
Thank you. And, I also want to recognize the work that Bernie has done on this. And, of course, we owe a debt of gratitude to President Barack Obama. Of course, I also work for President Obama, Vice President Biden. And I know that the problem with your plan is that it leaves 10 million people uncovered. Now, on the last debate stage in Detroit, you said that wasn't true. When Senator Harris brought that up, there was a fact check of that, and they said that was true. I grew up with a grandmother who had type 2 diabetes, and I watched her condition get worse and worse. But that whole time, she had Medicare. I want every single American family to have a strong Medicare plan available. If they choose to hold on to strong, solid private health insurance, I believe they should be able to do that. But the difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in. And I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference, because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Be in for it.
Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago? I mean, I can't believe that you said 2 minutes ago that they had to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
I said anyone like your grandmother who has no money.
We need a healthcare system.
You're automatically
enrolls people regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not. If you lose your job, for instance, his healthcare plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My healthcare plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
Andrew Yang.
This is why presidential debates are becoming unwatchable.
Yeah,
This
we're on the same
reminds
team.
everybody of what they cannot stand about Washington. Scoring points against each other, poking at each other, and telling each other
Oh,
that
shut up,
Look,
butt
we
geek.
all
Yeah, that's
have
called a
different
Democratic
visions for
primary
what is
election.
better about
That's
our
called an election. That's an election. You know, this is what we're here for. It's an election.
Yeah, but a house divided cannot stand. And that is not how we're
Look,
going to win
everyone,
this
we know we're on the same team here. We know we're on the same team. We all have a better vision for healthcare than our current president. And I believe we're talking about this the wrong way. As someone who has run a business, I know that our current healthcare system makes it harder to hire people, makes it harder to give them benefits and treat them as full-time employees. You instead pretend they're contractors. It's harder to change jobs. It's certainly harder to start a business. The pitch we have to make to the American people is we will get the healthcare weight off of your backs and then unleash the hopes and dreams of the American people.
Senator Booker.
Now, I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. And they tell me that they spend a lot of time on paperwork, avoiding being sued, and navigating the insurance bureaucracy. We have to change the incentives so instead of revenue and activity, people are focused on our health in the healthcare system. And the Cleveland
Doctors become doctors because they earn a buttload of money.
Shocker, they prescribe fewer procedures, and patient health stays the same or improves. That is the pitch to the American people.
Senator Booker, close out this discussion.
Thank you very much.
Ridiculous.
Look, there are a lot of people watching at home right now, listening to us, that are afraid because they are in crisis. They don't have health insurance. Their health insurance doesn't go far enough. They can't afford their prescription drugs. Look, I'm clear in what I believe. I believe in Medicare for all. I believe it's the best way to rationalize the system. But dear God, I know that every one of my colleagues on this stage is in favor of universal health coverage and comes at this with the best of intentions. And I'll tell you, there is an urgency right now in this nation. Everybody feels it.
The road to hell is paved with the best intentions, Spartacus.
Progress on the altar of purity. Because people in my community, they need help right now. They have high blood pressure right now. They have unaffordable insulin right now. And this must be a moment where we as Democrats can begin to show that we can not only stake and stand our ground, but find common ground, because we've got one shot to make Donald Trump a one-term president. And we cannot lose it by the way we talk about each other or demonize and degrade each other. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. If I am the leader, I will work towards the ideal of health insurance, health coverage being a right for all Americans. But every single day, I'll join with other Democrats to make progress happen in our nation for the people that are struggling and suffering today.
Candidates, thank you. Lindsay Davis.
Thanks, George. Since we're here at an HBCU, I'd like to start with young black voters. Several recent polls indicate their #1 concern is racism. This campus, this state, and this nation are still raw from that racially motivated attack on Latinos in El Paso. Now, we know that the racial divide started long before President Trump and President Obama, but each of you on this stage has said that President Trump has made that divide worse. Congressman O'Rourke, coming to you first, why are you the most qualified candidate to address this divide?
You know, I called this out in no uncertain terms on August 3rd and every day since then, and I was talking about it long before then as well. Racism in America is endemic. It is foundational.
No, it is
We can mark
not.
the creation of this country not at the 4th of July, 1776, but August 20th, 1619, when the first kidnapped African
No.
was brought to this country against
That
his
is
will,
untrue.
bondage, and as a slave, built the greatness and the success and the wealth that neither he nor his descendants would ever be able to fully participate in and enjoy.
All untrue lies.
Able to answer this challenge, and it is found in our education system, where in Texas, a 5-year-old child in kindergarten is 5 times as likely to be disciplined or suspended or expelled based on the color of their skin. In our healthcare system, where
That is not true.
mortality crisis 3 times as deadly for women of color, or the fact that there's 10 times the wealth in white America than there is in black America. I'm going to follow Sheila Jackson Lee's lead and sign into law a reparations bill that will allow us to address this at its foundations. But we will also call
Not on my tax-paying money, buddy.
white supremacist in the White House, and he poses a mortal threat to people of color all across this country.
Secretary Castro, 40.
That is ridiculous. This kind of rhetoric is what's creating this sort of divide.
Spoken to the passion and the frustration and the sadness after what happened in his hometown of El Paso. He's done a great job with that. Look, a few weeks ago, a shooter drove 10 miles inspired by this 10 hours inspired by this president.
He was not inspired by this president.
People who look like my family. White supremacy is a growing threat to this country, and we have to root it out. I'm proud that I put forward a plan to disarm hate. I'm also proud that I was the first to put forward a police reform plan, because we're not going to have any more Laquan McDonalds or Eric Garners or Michael Browns or Pamela Turners or Walter Scotts or Sandra Bland here from the Houston area. We need to root
This
out
is ridiculous.
racism,
This
and
is
I
like
believe
this
that we can do
constant
that
push
because
of
that doesn't
racism,
represent the
division,
vast
racism,
majority
division.
of
It's just
Americans who do have a
ridiculous.
good
There's
heart.
no
They
factual
also
basis
need
behind
a
anything
leader
that
to
they
match
talk
that,
about.
and I will be a president that matches that.
Senator Booker, you have said, quote, the real question isn't who is or isn't a racist, it's who's going to do something about it. Senator, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to hit that point because we know Donald Trump's a racist, but there is no red badge of courage for calling him that.
There's no racism there. He dated a black woman. He's been awarded by the black community over and over and over again.
And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy. We have systemic racism.
He condemned it over and over.
Eroding our nation from healthcare to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850. We have to come at this issue attacking systemic racism, having the courage to call it out and having a plan to do something about it. If I am president of the United States, we will create an office in the White House to deal with the problem of white supremacy and hate crimes. And we will make sure that systemic racism is dealt with in substantive plans, from criminal justice reform to the disparities in healthcare to even one that we don't talk about enough, which is the racism that we see in environmental injustice in communities of color all around this country.
Racism and environmental injustice. Good Lord, the idiocy.
You've also said that anyone who votes to re-elect President Trump is at best looking the other way on racism. Does that sort of talk alienate voters and potentially deepen divisions in our country?
I believe what's deepened divisions in the country is the conduct of this president, and we have a chance to change all of that. Look, systemic racism preceded this president, and even when we defeat him, it will be with us. That's why we need a systemic approach to dismantle it. It's not enough to just...
There's no such thing as systemic racism in 2019. That is an absolute idiocy.
Harms compound. In the same way that a dollar saved compound, so does a dollar stolen. And we know that the generational theft of the descendants of slaves is part of why everything from housing to education to health to employment basically puts...
That is nonsense. The opportunities have been there for all communities to partake in.
To tackle systemic racism in every one of these areas. Marshalling as many resources as...
And there are many poor whites.
...that rebuilt Europe, but this time a Douglas plan that we invest right here at home to make sure that we're not only dealing with things like the over-incarceration of black Americans, but also black solutions, entrepreneurship, raising to 25% the target for the federal government to do business with minority-owned businesses, investing in HBCUs.
No, because the government should not be choosing winners and losers.
We can and must do that, but that means transcending this framework that pits us against each other, that pits a single black mother of three against a displaced auto worker. Because where I come from, a lot of times that displaced auto worker is a single black mother of three. We've got to say that and bring people together.
Also a concern for people of color is criminal justice reform. Senator Harris, you released your plan for that just this week, and it does contradict some of your prior positions. Among them, you used to oppose the legalization of marijuana, now you don't. You used to oppose outside investigations of police shootings, now you don't. You've said that you changed on these and other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to effect change then?
So I'm glad you asked me this question, and there have been many distortions of my record. Let me be very clear. I made a decision to become a prosecutor for two reasons. One, I've always wanted to protect people and keep them safe. And second, I was born knowing about how this criminal justice system in America has worked in a way that has been informed by racial bias. And I could tell you extensively about the experiences I and my family members have personally had. But I made a decision that if I
That you personally perceived.
reform the system, I would try to do it from the inside. And so I took on the position that allowed me, without asking permission, to create one of the first in the nation initiatives that was a model and became a national model around people who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. I created one of the first in the nation requirements that a state law enforcement agency would have to wear cameras and keep them on full time. I created one of the first in the nation trainings for police officers on the issue of racial bias and the need to reform the system. Was I able to get enough done? Absolutely not. But my plan has been described by activists as being a bold and comprehensive plan that is about ending mass incarceration.
And who are these? A bold and comprehensive plan does not equate to a good plan.
Profit prisons on day one. It will be about what we need to do to hold law enforcement, including prosecutors, accountable. And finally, my plan is about making sure that in America's criminal justice system, we de-incarcerate women and children, that we end solitary confinement, and that we work on keeping families intact. And as President of the United States, knowing the system from the inside, I will have the ability to be an effective leader and get this job complete.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Senator Klobuchar, during your 8 years as a prosecutor in Minnesota, there were dozens of incidents where black men were killed by police. Critics say that too often you sided with police in these cases. The ACLU's legal director in Minnesota has said that you showed no interest in racial justice. Do you wish now that you had done more?
That's not my record. We are here at a historically black college. And I think of an alum of that college, Barbara Jordan, and something that she once said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want a country as good as its promise. And that same can be said of the criminal justice system. So when I was there, the way we handled these police shootings, I actually took a stand to make sure outside investigators handled them. I took on our major police chief in Minneapolis. But in the prosecutor's office, they were handled with the grand jury. That's how they were all handled across our state. I now believe it is better for accountability if the prosecutor handles them and makes those decisions herself. That aside, I am proud of the work our staff did, 400 people in our office. The cases that came to us, the African-American community that came to us, they said there was no justice for their little kids. There was a kid named Byron Phillips that was shot on his front porch. No one had bothered to figure out who did it. When I came into that office, we worked with the community groups, we put up billboards, we found the shooter, and we put him in jail. We did the same for the killer of a little girl named Taisha Edwards, who was doing her homework at her kitchen table and was shot through the window. What changes did we make? Go after white-collar crimes in a big way. Diversify the office in a big way. Work with the Innocence Project to make sure we do much better with eyewitness ID. And as a senator and as your president, I will make sure that we don't just do the First Step Act when it comes to criminal sentencing, that we move to the Second Step Act, which means the 90% of people that are incarcerated in local and state jails, let's reduce those sentences for nonviolent offenders, and let's get them jobs and let them vote when they get out of prison.
No, but she's not even talking about just look at the facts of a case, and she's not talking about that nobody did the first step when they had plenty of opportunity to do so.
To release many nonviolent drug offenders from prison. Senator Booker says that your plan is not ambitious enough. Your response?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I came back from law school, I had a job with a big time.
Yeah, that's true, Cocaine Mitch. The shooters were all black. Yeah.
Siege. When Dr. King was assassinated, we were occupied by the National Guard for 10 months. I've been involved from the beginning. As a young congressman, as a young councilman, I introduced legislation to try to keep them putting a sewer plant in a poor neighborhood. I made sure that we dealt with redlining. Banks should have to lend where they operate, et cetera. The fact of the matter is that what's happened is that we're in a situation now where there are so many people who are in jail and shouldn't be in jail. The whole means by which this should change is the whole model has to change. We should be talking about rehabilitation. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime. As when we were in the White House, we released 36,000 people from the federal prison system. Nobody should be in jail for a drug problem. They should be going directly to a rehabilitation. We build more rehabilitation centers, not prisons.
What is he talking about during the
drug courts to divert people from the criminal justice system? And so we have to change the whole way we look at this. When we put people in prison, we have to equip them when they get out. Nobody who got in prison for marijuana, for example, immediately upon being released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged. Every single right should be returned. When you finish your term in prison, you should be able not only vote, but have access to Pell Grants, have access to be able to get housing, have access to be able to move along the way. I've laid out a detailed plan along those lines. And the fact is we've learned so much more.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Booker, 45 seconds to respond.
Our criminal justice system is so savagely broken. There's no difference in America between blacks, whites, and Latinos for using drugs or dealing drugs. But if you're African American, you're almost 4 times more likely to be arrested and incarcerated, destroying your lives. And so much of this comes down to
maybe because you're 4 or 5 times more likely to actually do those crimes. That's the problem. Those communities do the crimes.
Challenge this whole field. We can specifically and demonstratively now show that there are 17,000 people unjustly incarcerated in America, and all of us should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has already led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, but we didn't make it retroactive, we could literally point to the people that are in jail unjustly right now. Everyone on this stage should say that we are going to give clemency to these 17,000 people. And I challenge you, don't just say big statements, back it up with details of the people in prison right now looking for one of the most sacrosanct ideals of this nation, which is liberty and freedom. We need to reform this system, and we must do it now. Every day we wait is too long.
You waited all this time. Nobody did anything. Trump actually did do something.
Mindful tonight of where we stand. We are here in Texas tonight, where 29 people have lost their lives in just the last month alone. El Paso, which we've discussed, in Odessa, and I know there are survivors from El Paso right here in the hall tonight. Vice President Biden, I do want to direct this to you because we all remember Sandy Hook. 26 people died in that school, 20 of them children. Those first graders would be in 8th grade today. At the time, there was a groundswell in this country to get something done. President Obama asked you to lead the push for gun control. You have often pointed to your ability to reach across the aisle to get things done. But 4 months after Sandy Hook, a measure to require expanded background checks died on the Senate floor. If you couldn't get it done after Sandy Hook, why should voters give you another chance?
Because it got done before. I'm the only one up here who's ever beat the NRA. Only one ever beat the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that brought the Brady Bill into focus and became law. And so that's number one. Number two, after Sandy Hook, a number of things happened. It went from a cause to a movement. Look what's happened now. Mothers, the organization, Mothers Against Violence, gun violence. We've seen what's happened again. Now we have all these young people marching on Washington, making sure that things are going to change. There has been a sea change. Those proposals I put forward for the president had over 50% of members of the NRA supporting them, and overwhelmingly the rest of the people supporting them. Now the numbers are much higher because they realize what I've been saying, and we've all been saying, is correct. Over 90% of the American people think we have to get assault weapons off the street, period. And we have to get buybacks and get them out of their basements. So the point is...
That's not a buyback, it's a gun confiscation. You're going to have a civil war on your hands, Buttercup.
The way Beto handled, excuse me for saying Beto, what Congressman...
That's all right. Beto's good.
The way he handled what happened in his hometown is meaningful. To look in the eyes of those people, to see those kids, to understand those parents, you understand the heartache.
But this is the problem.
We are ready to do this.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. You did bring up assault weapons here.
And yet I can guarantee you that none of them on that stage can actually define what an assault weapon really is.
Executive order. Senator Harris, you have said that you would take executive action on guns within your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more than 23 executive actions, and yet here we all are today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the vice president have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the senator answer.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Let's be constitutional.
And yes, we can.
Thank
because I'll
you.
tell you
Thank
something.
you, Joe. Yes, let's be constitutional.
This is, I've seen more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you.
Irrelevant.
I have attended more police officer funerals than I care to tell you.
Irrelevant.
I have hugged more mothers of homicide victims than I care to tell you.
Horrible but irrelevant.
And the idea that we would wait for this Congress, which has just done nothing.
Thanks to you. You're part of that Congress.
Is just, it is overlooking the fact that every day in America, our babies are going to school to have drills, elementary, middle, and high school students, where they are learning about how they have to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner if there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their
Because you people aren't addressing the real problem behind the shootings.
He was 8 years old probably, came up to me, it was like it was a secret between the two of us, and he tugged on my jacket and he said, I had to have one of those drills.
I don't believe any of these children's stories that people throw.
Paso. And Beto, God love you for standing so courageously in the midst of that tragedy. You know, people asked me in El Paso, they said, you know, because I have...
And they're completely dodging the question.
said, well, do you think Trump is responsible for what happened? And I said, well, look, I mean, obviously he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition.
Senator Harris, thank you.
Give me a break.
Biden, do you still
Give me a
stand by
break.
what you
The rhetoric that's coming out of everyone's Twitter account on this stage is absolutely ludicrous compared to what Trump is saying.
By the way, you can't own the following weapons, period. They cannot be sold anymore. Check with constitutional scholars. Now,
Mr. Vice
can't
President,
say-
thank you. Congressman O'Rourke, I want to come to you on this. I'm going to work down the row here, but I do want to come to Congressman O'Rourke because I know this is personal to you. El Paso is your hometown. Some on this stage have suggested a voluntary buyback for guns in this country. You've gone further. You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s.
The nuclear bomb drills, that's right, yeah.
Sell them to the government, all of them. You know the critics call this confiscation. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work?
I am, if it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield, if the high-impact, high-velocity round, when it hits your body, shreds everything inside of your body because it was designed to do that so that you would bleed to death on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. When we see that being used against children, and in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used again.
See, there you go. Straight out gun confiscation. This guy is Hitler. This guy wants to do what dictators do.
I'm listening to the people of this country. The day after I proposed doing that, I went to a gun show in Conway, Arkansas, to meet with those who are selling AR-15s and AK-47s and those who are buying those weapons. And you might be surprised, there was some common ground there. Folks who said, I would willingly give that up, cut it to pieces. I don't need this weapon to hunt, to defend myself. It is a weapon of war. So let's do the right thing, but let's bring everyone in America into the conversation, Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, and non-gun owners alike.
Make a point. Congressman, thank you. I want to bring in Senator Klobuchar on this because
this guy's a dictator.
Talked about your uncle and the proud hunters back home in Minnesota. So I wanted to get your response to Congressman O'Rourke tonight. Where do you stand on
Disavow
mandatory
what?
gun buybacks?
I so appreciate what the congressman's been doing, and I want to remind
Disavow what exactly? I'm sorry.
so much bigger than what divides us. Everyone up here favors an assault weapon ban. Everyone up here favors magazines.
There was disarmament under the National Socialist Party.
That was in place in El Paso in that store where all those ordinary people showed such extraordinary courage. And certainly in Dayton, Ohio, where in 30 seconds, one man guns down innocent people. The cops got there in 1 minute, and it still wasn't enough to save those people. That's what unites us. You know what else unites us? And I'll tell you this. What unites us is that right now, on Mitch McConnell's desk are 3 bills. Universal background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, and passing my bill to make sure that domestic abusers don't get AK-47.
Senator Klobuchar.
Domestic abusers already cannot get a weapon because they won't pass a background check.
Program. That's what I think, David. But I want to finish this because if you want action now, we got to send the message to Mitch McConnell. We can't wait until one of us gets in the White House. We have to pass those bills right now to get this done.
Senator
because
Klobuchar.
we cannot spare another innocent life.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to turn to Senator Booker because you have said just this week about guns and about the candidates on this stage that the differences do matter. Those were your words. You have argued if you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license to buy a gun. Gun owners would not only have to pass a background check, they would have to obtain a federal license to buy a gun. This would require, as you know, Congress to pass legislation. If Democrats can't get universal background checks, how would you get this done? And can you name one Republican colleague of yours in the Senate right now who would be on board with this idea?
So background checks and gun licensing, these are agreed to by overwhelmingly the majority of Americans. 83% of Americans agree.
It's not a matter if they agree with it or not. It's a matter of how you put it in practice. And the way you people are putting it in practice is not reasonable. It's unconstitutional. It's stripping away at the rights of American citizens.
Aftermath of a shooting. It's one of the reasons why shooting after shooting.
And that's true. Guns save more lives than they take. That is absolutely true, statistically speaking.
Come out for gun licensing. And I'm happy that people like Beto O'Rourke are showing such courage now and coming forward and also now supporting licensing. But this is what I'm sorry about. I'm sorry that it had to take issues coming to my neighborhood or personally affecting Beto to suddenly make us demand change. This is a crisis of empathy in our nation.
It's a crisis of mental illness and the degradation of the morality within our society.
You want to know how we get this done? We get this done by having a more courageous empathy where people don't wait for this hell to visit upon their communities. They stand up and understand the truth of what King said, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I will lead change on this issue because I have seen what the carnage creates in communities like mine, because we forget national shootings, these mass shootings are tragedies, but the majority of the homicide victims come from neighborhoods like mine. Nobody has ascended to the White House that will bring more personal passion on this issue. I will fight this and bring a fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they have never seen before.
Senator Booker, thank you. A quick follow-up, though, because Americans watching tonight know the reality of Congress in Washington. I asked, do you have a Republican colleague in the Senate who would be on board with this idea to get this done?
You know, if that was the attitude when Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster ever on civil rights, if it was this idea that we can't get it done because of the situation in the Senate, I'm looking to lead a movement. The number one reason why governments are formed is to protect the citizenry. Think about this. We have had more people die due to gun violence in my lifetime than every single war in this country combined from the Revolutionary War till now. This is not a side issue to me.
I don't think that's necessarily true, but I would have to look at the statistics on that one.
The majority of homicide victims, we have a mass shooting every single day in communities like mine. We must awaken a more courageous empathy in this country so that we stand together and fight together and overwhelm those Republicans who are not even representing their constituency, because the majority of Americans, the majority of gun owners agree with me, not the corporate gun.
No, they don't, actually. They really, really don't.
We'll lead it.
Senator Booker, thank you. Senator Warren, I want to come to you next, because you have actually said in recent days that there are things you can get done with Republicans in the Senate. What can you get done on gun control?
So let's start by framing the problem the right way. We have a gun violence problem in this country. The mass shootings are terrible, but they get all the headlines. Children die every day on streets, in neighborhoods, on playgrounds. People die from violence, from suicide and domestic abuse. We have a gun violence problem in this country, and we agree on many steps we could take to fix it. My view on this is it's not going to be one and done on this. We're going to do it, and we're going to have to do it again, and we're going to have to come back some more until we cut the number of gun deaths in this country.
Yeah, she's not proposing any single actual policy.
The question we need to ask is, when we've got this much support across the country, 90% of Americans want to see us do, I like registration, want to see us do background checks.
I don't like registration, lady. That's the next step to confiscation and disarmament of your population, which infringes on the Second Amendment.
We have a Congress that is beholden to the gun industry. And unless we're willing to address that head on and roll back the filibuster, we're not going to get anything done on guns. I was in the United States Senate when 54 senators said, let's do background checks, let's get rid of assault weapons. And with 54 senators, it failed because of the filibuster. Until we attack the systemic problems, we can't get gun reform in this country. We've got to go straight against the industry, and we've got to change Congress so it doesn't just work for the wealthy and well-connected, so it works for the people.
Senator Warren, thank you. You bring up eliminating the filibuster, which means you would need simply a simple majority in a Republican Senate to get.
Yeah, she wants to get rid of the one single best legislative tool a legislator has,
which he's talked about himself. You should be nervous. Would you support ending the filibuster?
No, but what I would support absolutely is passing major legislation, the gun legislation the people here are talking about, Medicare for all, climate change legislation that saves the planet. I will not wait for 60 votes to make that happen. And you could do it in a variety of ways. You could do that through budget reconciliation law. You have a vice president who will, in fact, tell the Senate what is appropriate and what is not, what is in order and what is not. But I want to get back to a point that Elizabeth made, and that, in fact, in terms of gun issues, and picking up on Corey and Beto and everybody else, what we are looking at is a corrupt political system. And that means whether it is the drug companies, or the insurance companies, or the fossil fuel industry determining what's happening in Washington, or in this case, you got an NRA, which has intimidated the President of the United States and the Republican leadership. I am proud that year after year I had an F rating from the NRA. And as president, I will not be intimidated by the NRA.
Senator Sanders, thank you.
May I respond?
We've been hearing a lot about what's been happening here in Texas. Only a few weeks ago, the deadliest massacre of Latinos in modern U.S. history happened in this state, in El Paso. So the fear among Latinos, and you know this, is very real. So let me start with an issue that is causing a lot of division in this country, immigration. Vice President Biden, as a presidential candidate in 2008, you supported the border wall, saying, unlike most Democrats, I voted for 700 miles of fence. This is what you said. Then you served as vice president in an administration that deported 3 million people, the most ever in U.S. history.
Yeah.
Did you do anything to prevent those deportations? I mean, you've been asked this question before and refused to answer, so let me try once again. Are you prepared to say tonight that you and President Obama made a mistake about deportations?
Why would that be a mistake?
What Latinos should look at is comparing this president to the president we have is outrageous. Number one, we didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families.
Yes, you did. The cages and facilities were built under your administration, jackass.
The president came along with the DACA program. No one had ever done that before. This is the president who sent legislation to death.
DACA was a constitutional abuse of his executive power.
United States of America. This is the president who's done a great deal. So I'm proud to have served with him. What I would
What a liar.
is several more things, because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come. I would change
through the proper channels.
Women who were being beaten and abused could no longer claim that as a reason for asylum. And by the way, retrospectively, you know, the 25th anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act is up. The Republican Congress has not reauthorized it. Let's put pressure on them to pass the Violence Against Women Act now. But then we'll go back.
You didn't answer the question.
Well,
the question
I
is, did you make a mistake with those deportations?
The president did the best thing that was able to be done at the time.
How about you?
I'm the vice president of the United States.
Secretary Castro, would you want to respond to Vice
look,
President Biden?
you know,
and let me put this in context.
Is someone going to tell him he's still not the vice president anymore? I don't know.
House and Congress in 2009 and didn't pass immigration reform. And this broke a promise made by President Barack Obama to Latinos. So why should voters trust Democrats now? I mean, now it is even more difficult, as you know, because you need Republican votes in the Senate. So are you willing, for instance, to give up DACA or give up a path to citizenship or even agree to build a wall in order to legalize 10.5 million undocumented immigrants?
Jorge, thank you very much for that question. And look, I agree that Barack Obama was very different from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a dark heart when it comes to immigrants. He built his whole political career so far on scapegoating and fear-mongering and otherizing migrants, and that's very different for Barack Obama. But my problem with Vice President Biden, Corey pointed this out last time, is every time something good about Barack Obama comes up, he says, oh, I was there, that's me too. And then every time somebody questions part of the administration that we were both part of, he says, well, that was the president. I mean, he wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer to any questions. I mean,
Vice President Biden, you have,
I don't get that.
You have 45 seconds.
Let me just say,
what I said.
let me just say that I was the first candidate in early April to put forward an immigration plan. You know why? Because I'm not afraid of Donald Trump on this issue. I'm not going to backpedal. I'm not going to pretend like I don't have my own vision for immigration. So we're not going to give up DACA. We're not going to give up protections for anybody. I believe that on January 20th, 2021, we're going to have a Democratic president. We're going to throw out Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn and have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. And we're going to pass immigration reform within the first 100 days.
Vice President, 45 seconds.
I did not say I don't stand. I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years, good, bad, and indifferent. That's where I stand. I did not say I did not stand with him.
Okay, Senator Warren, hundreds of children have been separated from their parents at the border. And recently in Mississippi, we saw the largest immigration raid in a decade. You want to replace ICE, the agency in charge of rounding up undocumented immigrants. So how would you deal with the millions of immigrants who arrive legally but overstay their visas? And how would you stop hundreds of thousands of Central Americans who want to migrate to the U.S.?
Well, I start with a statement of principles, and that is, in this country, immigration does not make us weaker. Immigration makes us stronger. I want to see us
the numbers don't agree with that, Pocahontas.
And create a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, but also for their grandparents and for their cousins, for people who overstayed student visas, and for people who came here to work in the fields. I want to have a system that is a path to citizenship that is fair and achievable. Down at the border, we've got to rework this entirely. A system right now that cannot tell the difference in the threat posed by a terrorist, a criminal, and a 12-year-old girl is not a system that is keeping us safer, and it is not serving our values.
Mr. Yang.
I want to add one more part on this, because I think we have to look at all the pieces. Why do we have a crisis at the border? In no small part because we have withdrawn help from people in Central America who are suffering. We need to restore
Gotta be
that
kidding me.
help.
The United States, everybody on the left has always complained about us being the policemen of the world, and now she's saying, oh, we gotta give money to Central America because their own governments are such crap, they won't help their own citizens. But the United States citizens have to pay out of their own pocket to help other countries. Are you joking?
It is true that in the last few years we have seen the most severe anti-immigrant measures, from putting kids in cages to limiting asylum.
That is not true. That happened under the Obama administration, Jorge.
True that about 1 million immigrants enter the U.S.
This is really aggravating me listening to these people.
So are you willing to raise the number of legal immigrants from 1 million to 2 million per year? And should there be a merit system, as President Trump wants?
So, yeah, I'm sorry, did you ask me or?
Mr. Yang.
I already said it, okay. Sorry.
My father grew up on a peanut farm in Asia with no floor, and now his son is running for president. That is the immigration story that we have to be able to share with the American people. If you look at our history, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by their immigrants or children of immigrants, and rates of business formation are much higher in immigrant communities. We have to say to the American people—
Where have I heard peanut farmer before?
And I would return the level of legal immigration to the point it was under the Obama-Biden administration. I think we have to compete for talent, and I am the opposite of Donald Trump in many ways. He says build a wall. I'm going to say to immigrants, come to America, because if you come here, your son or daughter can run for president. The water is great, and this is where you want to build a company, build a family, and build a life. This country has been a magnet for human capital for generations. If we lose that, we lose something integral to our continued success, and that is where I would lead as president.
I never claimed I had super hot takes, easy of an operator.
10 Latinos in Texas for another mass shooting targeting.
I am a normie.
Your new Univision poll. President Trump has called Mexican immigrants rapists and killers.
Again, Jorge, liar! Liar, liar, pants on damn fire, dude. He didn't say that all Mexicans were rapists.
Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism.
Screw you. Screw you, Pete. Screw you.
Who actually buy into this president's hateful rhetoric around immigrants are people who don't know any. We have an opportunity to build an—
That is the most ridiculous statement I have ever heard all night. Just because you want legal immigration, that doesn't mean that you are against immigration.
When he went into ICE to try to get his paperwork sorted out, because they never thought it would happen to him. In some of the most conservative rural areas of Iowa, I have seen communities that embraced immigration grow, and it's why part of my plan for revitalizing—
That's a good point, Soldat. I gotta be careful what I say around him when I'm talking about screwing and other stuff like that. Very valid point.
Cities and towns and counties that are hurting not only for jobs but for population to embrace immigration as we have in my city. You know, the only reason that South Bend is growing right now, after years of shrinking, is immigration. It's one of the reasons we acted, not waiting for Washington, to create—
Yes, but is that growth a positive growth? Has it actually brought positive things to your community? Or has statistics shown that maybe things are worse in your community because of the influx of other not so favorable cultures? Let's put it that way.
Same debate with the same arguments and the same clever lines, often among the same people, since the last real reform happened in the 1980s. We have to actually engage the American majority around the opportunities for not just growth in small communities, but our values of welcome, values of faith that all argue for us to manage this humanely and in a way that marries our values with our laws.
Congresista Beto O'Rourke, una pregunta para usted. In an interview 8 months ago, you were asked what to do with the so-called overstayers, people who come with a visa and then stay. And you said, I don't know.
He better not start speaking Spanish.
I do, and if you read the rest of that article in the Washington Post, I talked about harmonizing our entry-exit system with Mexico in the same way that we do with Canada. I think that could help us to keep a handle on visa overstays. But I think the larger question that we're trying to get at is how do we rewrite this country's immigration laws in our own image, in the image of Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the United States of America, in the image of El Paso, Texas, one of the safest cities in the United States of America.
Wasn't it just a mass shooting in El Paso? Are you really sure you want to still claim it as the safest city?
of immigrants. Conocemos que si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades y nuestro país, necesitamos tratar cada persona con respeto y dignidad. I will lead an effort to make sure that we rewrite our immigration laws in that way. Never cage another child. Make sure that there is accountability and justice for the 7.
¿Dónde está la batería?
But also face the fact that Democrats and Republicans alike voted to build a wall that has produced thousands of deaths of people trying to cross to join family.
You know, I wonder, the hit and run that Beto did and he killed a person, what nationality was that person, I wonder? What ethnic background were they?
Country breaking up their families. Democrats have to get off the back foot. We have to lead on this issue because we know it is right. Legalize America. Begin with those more than 1 million dreamers. Make them U.S. citizens right now in their true home country.
Gracias.
And extend that to their parents, their sisters, and their brothers, and ensure that we have a legal, safe, orderly system to come to this country and add to our greatness here.
Thank you, George.
Jorge, thank you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, national security, foreign policy, the impact on American jobs and U.S. troops.
Candidates, one critical night. And
All right.
now, right after the debate wraps, the candidates.
Let me remove the audio here for a second while there's the break. Oh my God, where to even begin? I mean, this is garbage leftist talking point after garbage leftist talking point. Medicare for all. Nobody explained how they want to pay for that except for just raising taxes on people, which they're going to have to do. You're going to have to raise taxes on everybody, and it's not even going to be enough. It's just not. It is not going to be enough. The taxes that are going to be levied will not cover, will not cover the entirety of the cost of Medicare for all. And Medicare in general is actually garbage. It is not great health care. This is the problem with the debate. The debate about health care boils down to this with the left. The left is, we want everybody to be covered. Great. Okay, everybody's covered. What about the quality of the care? What about the cost, where the cost is being generated? Nobody talks about how to reduce the actual cost of medicine in the medicine industry. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about why does it cost $5,000 or $7,000 to drive for 5 minutes in an ambulance, for example, or you get charged $3,000 in an ER when all they give you is some pain medication, or they give you an antibiotic or something like that if you happen to have, say, a throat infection or a sinus infection or something like that. Why does that cost $3,000? I don't see any itemization in the bill. I don't see any itemization and transparency on the side of the hospitals, of the medical facilities and institutions. And I don't see the insurance company justifying how much they're paying to these companies and hospitals and doctors. You know? Then the other thing about gun control, every one of them was essentially going through fascistic dictatorship kind of maneuvers here of disarming your populace and building a registry. Warren wants a registry. Beto, Robert wants a registry. That's frightening to hear. I can understand why Tim Pool lost his crap about that. That is frightening because that's what happened in Venezuela. That's what happened. No, Hitler did not. He only armed a group of people that he wanted to arm, and he disarmed the rest. Because I can guarantee you that if everybody was armed, he was not going to be able to do all the stuff that he did when it came to the concentration camps and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not going to get into that whole thing. No, you're incorrect. So the point is this. The point is that disarming a populace makes them vulnerable. Doesn't matter if you like that populace or not. And that's the problem. That's the issue. So a government infringing on people's rights of self-defense. Infringing on people's rights of self-defense is unacceptable. It's unconstitutional, and I have to give credit to Biden. You know, I have to give credit to Biden, and even Kamala Harris could not dodge the question. She tried to dodge the question because she didn't answer it. And Biden actually had a valid retort. Let's be constitutional. You can't just do executive orders left and right. You know, I wish Biden was more like that as vice president, because he should have told Obama, you can't do all these executive orders that you're doing. Yeah, yes, Dietzlander, I'm streaming on Periscope, DLive, YouTube, and bitwave.tv, of course. So it's really ridiculous about this whole gun confiscation thing. And now this whole thing about immigration. 90% of what they were talking about, absolute lies. Biden lied through his teeth, saying that they didn't cage kids, they didn't do... That's where the caging pictures come from. 2014, Joe. 2014. Who was president during 2014? And who was vice president during 2014? Last I checked, that was your butt was vice president. And the old whole Obama was president. So don't tell me that you had nothing to do with that all of a sudden when you people put those holding facilities together, and the pictures come from those years, okay? All right, and then you have this whole thing about the immigration debate that everybody's claiming that Trump is racist, Trump is racist, Trump is racist. All right, I'm going to say this once and for all the lefties that may be interested in listening to the stream if they ever have an interest. The point is that a person who is racist will not date a black woman. A person who is racist will not win awards from Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton about how much they've done for the black community. A president who is racist wouldn't enact policies that would benefit minority communities. His policies have helped minority communities. They've helped Latinos, Asians, blacks, whites. It's helped everybody. All right. We're back. So let's, I'm losing my mind here. I'm ranting. Whew. Oh, all right.
In our trade relationship with China.
I would not repeal the tariffs on day one, but I would let the Chinese know that we need to hammer out a deal, because right now the tariffs are pummeling producers and farmers in Iowa who have absolutely nothing to do with the imbalances that we have with China. A CEO friend of mine was in China recently, and he said that he saw pirated U.S. intellectual property on worker workstations to the tune of thousands of dollars per head. And he said, one, how can my workers compete against that? And two, think about all the lost revenue to American companies. So the imbalances are real, but we have to let the Chinese know that we recognize that President Trump has pursued an arbitrary and haphazard trade policy that has had victims on both sides.
Not true, actually. The trade policies that Trump has enacted have actually resulted in positive changes with the countries that he's had these arrangements with.
Let me take that question. Let me take that question to you, because if you've seen President Trump's tweets, he says what's going to happen here is the Chinese are just going to wait him out so they can get a Democrat who they can take advantage of. How do you think about China? We've seen President Trump call President Xi both an enemy and a friend.
Well, the president clearly has no strategy. You know, when I first got into this race, I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping. Is it just me, or was that supposed to
He is. China is actually working with the Trump administration right now.
happens on the international stage? People take note. Not just our competitors, our adversaries, but also our allies take note of the inability of the United States to keep its word or follow through on its plans. And when that happens, there are serious consequences. We saw it at the G7, the leaders of some of the greatest powers and economies of the world sitting to talk about one of the greatest challenges in the world, climate change, and there was literally an empty chair where American leadership could have been. The problem is, this is a moment when American leadership is needed more than ever, whether it's in Hong Kong, where those protesters for democracy need to know that they have a friend in the United States, or anywhere around the world where increasingly we see dictators throwing their weight around. The world needs America, but it can't be just any America.
Would you repeal the tariffs?
I would have a strategy that would include the tariffs as leverage, but it's not about the tariffs. Look, what's going on right now is a president who has reduced the entire China challenge into
Shocking, isn't it, left-hand psychopath?
the tariffs are coming down on us more than anybody else, and there's a lack of a bigger strategy.
Senator Klobuchar, you've actually supported the tariffs on steel.
What we've got right now, though, George, it's not a focused tariff on steel. What he has done here, he has assessed these tariffs on our allies. He has put us in the middle of this trade war, and he is treating our farmers and our workers like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And if we are not careful, he is going to bankrupt this country. One forecast recently says that it has already cost us 300,000 jobs. All right? There is soybeans that are mounting up in bins all over the Midwest, in my state of Minnesota and in Iowa.
People shouldn't be eating that much soy to begin with.
Negotiating table, that's what I would do. I wouldn't have put all these tariffs in place, and I wouldn't have had a trade policy where on August 1st he announces he's going to have tariffs on $300 billion of goods. On August 13th...
So what is your proposal, Klobuchar? To just have salad with them, eating it with a fork, with a comb? Is that what it is?
This, and it undermines our strength as a nation. And yes, we want fair trade, but we must work with the rest of the world. And he has made a mockery of focused trade policy, which I think means enforcement, like we've done in northern Minnesota, passing bills, getting President Obama to do more on that so that our workers can benefit. So we are importing, exporting goods, and making sure that is a competitive policy, where our goal is that we are making things, inventing things, and exporting to the world. He is defeating that goal.
Secretary Castro, you actually in one of the
actually he's not.
China is the most serious national security threat to our country. I want to pick up on what Senator Klobuchar was saying, though. She said she'd go back to the negotiating table. The question is, what do you do for leverage? Where do you get it?
Well, look, I agree with those who have said that this erratic, haphazard trade war is hurting American families. As Senator Klobuchar said, 300,000 American jobs. It's estimated that it's cost $600 to the average American family. Just a couple of days ago, 60% of Americans said that they believe that we're in for a recession next year. So when I become president, I would immediately begin to negotiate with China to ratchet down that trade war. We have leverage there. I also believe that...
What leverage? You haven't said what leverage we have.
Leader when it comes to things like human rights. We have millions of Uyghurs, for instance, in China that right now are being imprisoned and mistreated. And in North Korea, this president is elevating a dictator. We need to stop that. We need to return to ensuring that America leads again on human rights. When it comes to this trade war, I would immediately begin ratcheting that trade war down. We have leverage in that discussion.
Trump is the only president that has actually brought down the missile launches that North Korea has done.
To some kind of regulation. What do you think he got wrong?
So our trade policy in America has been broken for decades. And it has been broken because it works for giant multinational corporations and not for much of anyone else. These are giant corporations.
Who provides the goods and services, Pocahontas?
A job to a foreign country,
Good Lord.
They'll do it in a heartbeat. And yet...
And it was Democrat policies that allowed companies to offshore a lot of work and get all the IT support in India, for example.
It's been the giant corporations. It's been their lobbyists and their executives. The way we change our trade policy in America is first, the procedures. Who sits at the table? I want to negotiate trade with unions at the table. I want to negotiate it with small farmers at the table.
I get that, cunt pirate, but the problem that I have is, like, if you want to criticize and put forth an argument of criticism, how about you just base it in reality at least? Base it in reality, not just make crap up.
Wants access to the American market. That means that we have the capacity to say right here in America, you want to come sell goods to American consumers, then you've got to raise your standards. You've got to raise your labor standards, and you've got to raise your environmental standards so our companies can compete on a level playing field. We can use trade not to undermine American workers and not to undermine American farms and not to undermine small businesses in this country. We can use trade to help build a stronger economy.
Senator Harris, how would your trade policy differ from President Obama's?
Well, first of all, I have no criticism of that more than just looking at where we are now, which is that we've got a guy in the White House who has been erratic on trade policy. He conducts...
The trade policy actually has not been erratic. He's been very consistent with each country.
It has resulted in farmers in Iowa with soybeans rotting in bins, looking at bankruptcy. When we look at this issue, my trade policy under a Harris administration is always going to be about saying we need to export American products, not American jobs. And to do that, we have to have a meaningful trade policy. I am not a protectionist Democrat. Look, we need to sell our stuff. And that means we need to sell it to people overseas. That means we need trade policies that allow that to happen. You asked earlier about China. It's a complicated relationship. We have to hold China accountable. They steal our products, including our intellectual property. They dump substandard products into our economy. They need to be held accountable. We also need to partner with China on climate and the crisis that presents. We need to partner with China on the issue of North Korea. I am on, and I think the only person on this stage, the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee. We need a partner on the issue of North Korea. But the bottom line is this: Donald Trump, in office on trade policy, you know, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz. You know, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
Okay. I'm not even going to take the bait, Senator Harris, but I am going to take this to Senator.
George, it wasn't about you.
I'm going to take this to Senator Sanders right now.
There is a reason why in the last 45 years, the average American today, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, is not making a penny more than he or she made 45 years ago.
Untrue. Wages have been constantly going up. They actually went down under Obama, and they're going up again.
And I got to say to my good friend Joe Biden, Joe and I strongly disagree on trade. I helped lead the opposition to NAFTA and PNTR, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs. Yep. And what happened is...
No, wages have actually been going up.
Those jobs ended up getting other jobs, making 50% of what they made in manufacturing. So Trump obviously hasn't a clue. Trump thinks that trade policy is a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning. What we have got to do is develop a trade policy that represents workers, represents the farmers in the Midwest and elsewhere who are losing billions right now because of Trump's policy. A trade policy which understands that if a company shuts down in America and goes abroad and then thinks they're going to get online to get a lucrative federal contract under Bernie Sanders, they got another guess coming.
Vice President Biden, he invoked your name.
Yeah. Well,
and still he didn't propose anything in that whole diatribe of word salad.
Trade, the rules of the road. We make up 25% of the world economy. We need another 25% to join us. And I think Senator Warren is correct. At the table has to be labor, and at the table have to be environmentalists. The fact of the matter is, China, the problem isn't the trade deficit. The problem is they're stealing our intellectual property. The problem is they're violating the WTO. They're dumping steel on us. That's a different issue than whether or not they're dumping agricultural products on us. In addition to that, we're in a position where if we don't set the rules, we, in fact, are going to find ourselves with China setting the rules. And that's why you need to organize the world to take on China to stop the corrupt practices that are underway.
Senator Booker, close out this round.
Sure. There's one point we're really missing on the stage right now, which is the fact that Donald Trump's America First policy is actually an America isolated, an America alone policy.
Exactly.
From trade to battling China to
that's not true in the least.
Global crisis of climate change, the challenges in the Middle East, he is pulling us away from our allies, out of the Iran deal, out of the Paris Climate Accords. And on trade, he's deciding to take on China while at the same time taking on tariff battles with all of our allies. You literally have him using a national security waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now look, I'm the only person on the stage that finds Trudeau's hair very menacing, but they are not a national security threat. We cannot go up against China alone. This is a president that has a better relationship with dictators like Duterte and Putin than he does with Merkel and Macron. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and our strength is multiplied and magnified when we stand with our allies in common cause and common purpose. That's how we beat China. That's how we beat climate change on the planet.
Yeah, but we can't have our allies basically telling us what we need to do for our country. That's the problem with these sort of we have to work with our allies arguments that they make.
Talks with the Taliban are dead, according to the president. Secret talks at Camp David have been canceled before they could happen. Many of you have weighed in on that already. So I want to move past that tonight to what all of you have promised on the campaign trail. Many of you on this stage have said you'd bring the troops home in your first term. Others have said in your first year. Senator Warren, we all know the presidency is much different from the campaign trail. President Obama wanted to bring the troops home. President Trump promised to bring the troops home. And you have said of Afghanistan, let's help them reach a peace settlement. It is time to bring our troops home, in your words, starting right now.
Oh, God, Merkel's government is a disaster.
Right now, with no deal with the Taliban.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. What we're doing right now in Afghanistan is not helping the safety and security of the United States. It is not helping the safety and security of the world. It is not helping the safety and security of Afghanistan. We need to bring our troops home. And then we need to make a big shift. We cannot ask our military to keep solving problems that cannot be solved militarily. We're not going to...
But they want to give a bunch of money to like Central America, though.
We need to treat the problem of terrorism as a worldwide problem. And that means we need to be working with all of our allies, our European allies, our Canadian allies, our Asian allies, our allies in Africa and in South America. We need to work together to root out terrorism. It means using all of our tools. It means economic investment. It means expanding our diplomatic efforts instead of hollowing out the State Department and deliberately making it so we have no eyes and ears in many of these countries. We need a foreign policy that is about our security and about leading on our values.
Senator Warren, a quick follow on that, because top U.S. leaders, military leaders on the ground in Afghanistan told me you can't do it without a deal with the Taliban. You just said you would. You would bring them home. What if they told you that? Would you listen to their advice?
I was in Afghanistan with John McCain 2 years ago this past summer. I think it may have been Senator McCain's.
So she visited, that means she knows everything, right?
And I talked to people. We did. We talked to military leaders, American and local leaders. We talked to people on the ground and asked the question, the same one I ask on the Senate Armed Services Committee, every time one of the generals comes through. Show me what winning looks like. Tell me what it looks like. And what you hear is a lot of because no one can describe it. And the reason no one can describe it is because the problems in Afghanistan are not problems that can be solved by a military. I have 3 older brothers who all served in the military. I understand firsthand the kind of commitment they have made. They will do anything we ask them to do. But we cannot ask them to solve problems that they alone cannot solve. We need to work with the rest of the world. We need to use our economic tools. We need to use our diplomatic tools.
Yeah, but you criticize Trump for putting for putting sanctions on Iran. But we can't use those tools with Iran, but we got to do it with Afghanistan, right? This doesn't make any... These people are so inconsistent, it's not even funny.
Of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said in recent days, I'm not going to use the word withdrawal right now. It's our judgment the Afghans need support to deal with the level of violence.
He looks like someone took his binky away.
Would you put your promise to bring troops home in the first year on hold to follow the advice?
You know, I served under General Dunford, way under General Dunford in Afghanistan. And today, September 12th, 2019, means that today you could be 18 years old enough to serve, and have not been alive on 9/11. We have got to put an end to endless war. And the way we do it is see to it that that country will never again be used for an attack against our homeland, and that does not require an open-ended commitment of ground troops. Let me say something else, because if there's one thing we've learned about Afghanistan, from Afghanistan, it's that the best way not to be caught up in endless war is to avoid starting one in the first place. And so, when I am president, an authorization for the use of military force will have a built-in 3-year sunset. Congress will be required to vote, and a president will be required to go to Congress to seek an authorization. Because if our troops can summon the courage to go overseas, the least our members of Congress should be able to do is summon the courage to take a vote on whether they ought to be there. By the way, we also have a president right now who seems to treat troops as props, or worse, tools for his own enrichment. Which is
untrue. The problem with a hard deadline sunset clause is that you basically are telling the enemy, this is when they can really start, they can wait, and then right after the sunset clause expires, they can go ahead and do whatever the hell they want. That doesn't work. It's not practical. It's not a good idea.
This president is doing exactly that. I will not.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you. I want to turn to Vice President Biden, because the concerns about any possible vacuum being created in Afghanistan if you pull the U.S. troops out has been heightened by what we've seen in recent days on the ground in Iraq. When you were Vice President...
And what the creation of ISIS that was under his administration.
I made sure the President turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq. There was a major drawdown of U.S. troops, and then ISIS seized, by some estimates, 40% of the territory in Iraq. You then had to send thousands of troops back in. Was it wrong to pull out of Iraq that quickly, and did the move actually take hold?
Yes, it did.
No, it wasn't wrong to pull up. But I want to answer an Afghanistan question. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, not with a gun, and I admire my friend for his service. But I've been out of Afghanistan, I think, more than anybody on this, and it's an open secret. You reported a long time ago, George, that I was opposed to the surge in Afghanistan. The whole purpose of going to Afghanistan was to not have a counterinsurgency, meaning that we're going to put that country together. It cannot be put together. Let me say it again. It will not be put together. It's 3 different countries. Pakistan owns the 3 counties, the 3 provinces, and the East. They're not any part of it. The Connies run it. I will go on and on, but here's the point. The point is that it's a counter-terrorism strategy. We can prevent the United States from being the victim of terror coming out of Afghanistan by providing for bases, insist that Pakistanis provide bases for us to airlift from and to move against what we know. We don't need those troops there. I would bring them home. And Joe Dunford's a fine guy, but this has been an internal argument we've had for 8 years. With regard to Iraq, the fact of the matter is that, I should have never voted to give Bush the authority to go in and do what he said he was going to do. The AUMF was designed, he said, to go in and get the Security Council to vote 15-0 to allow inspectors to go in to determine whether or not anything was being done with chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. And when that happened, he went ahead and went anyway without any of that proof. I said something that was not meant the way I said it. I said from that point on, what I was argued against in the beginning, once he started to put the troops in, was that, in fact, we were doing it the wrong way. There was no plan. We should not be engaged. We didn't have the people with us. We didn't have our alliance. We didn't have allies with us, etc. And it was...
That's not entirely true. For a brief period of time, there was a plan, and in fact, the first period of time in Iraq actually was very successful.
Get the troops home. My son spent a year in Iraq, and I understand and we were right to get the combat troops out. The big mistake that was made, which we predicted, was that you would not have a circumstance where the Shia and the Kurds would work together to keep ISIS from moving in.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this, because the concern over Afghanistan is very similar to what we saw in Iraq when the troops came out. ISIS filled that vacuum. What do you make of people out there who are worried that if we pull out U.S. troops too quickly from Afghanistan, it will create safe haven all over again, like the plotters of 9/11?
David, let me answer that, but let me just comment on something that the Vice President said. You talked about the big mistake in Iraq and the surge. The truth is, the big mistake, the huge mistake, and one of the big differences between you and me, I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq. I voted against the war in Iraq and helped lead the opposition. And it's sad to say, I mean, I kind of, had the feeling that there would be massive destabilization in that area if we went into that war. As the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I want to pick up on what Pete said. We cannot express our gratitude to all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, who have responded to the call of duty. But I think also I am the only person up here to have voted against all three of Trump's military budgets. I don't think we have to spend $750 billion a year on the military when we don't even know who our enemy is. I think that what we have got to do is bring this world together. Bring it together on climate change. Bring it together in fighting against terrorism. And make it clear that we as a planet, as a global...
I don't think terrorists really care about climate change. Do you? I don't really think they do.
Rebuild their struggling economies and do everything that we can to rid the world of terrorism. But dropping bombs on Afghanistan and Iraq was not the way to do it.
You're not going to bring terrorists together, buddy.
I want to take this to Mr. Yang. You share the stage, as you know, when we talk about troops in Iraq and Afghanistan with the Vice President who was in the Situation Room, with senators who are on the Senate Armed Services, the Foreign Relations Committees, with an Afghanistan veteran who is on the stage tonight. As you share the stage with these candidates, what makes you the most qualified on this stage to be Commander-in-Chief?
I've signed a pledge to end the forever wars. We've been in a state of continuous armed conflict for 18 years, which is not what the American people want. We have to start owning what we can and can't do. We're not very good at rebuilding countries, and if you want proof, all you have to do is look within our own country at Puerto Rico. We've spent trillions of dollars to unclear benefits, lost thousands of lives, and thank you, Pete, for your service. And the goal has to be to rebuild the relationships that have made America strong for decades. I would lead our armed forces with restraint and judgment. What the American people want is simply a president who has the right values and point of view, and they can trust to make the right decisions when it comes to putting our young men and women into harm's way. And that's what I would do as president.
Mr. Yang, thank you.
No, he didn't answer the question.
Thank you very much. Vamos a hablar de América Latina. You haven't been asked about Latin America in the previous debate, so let's begin. Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela. A recent UN fact-finding mission found that thousands have been disappeared, tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why, and what are the main differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua?
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela so that the people of that country can create their own future. In terms of democratic socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe.
No, it's the same thing, buddy.
I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right. I believe that the United States should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. I believe that every worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand the trade union movement.
And you believe of taking the money from everybody and redistributing it.
What, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country. You got a handful of billionaires controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an economy that works for all of us, not 1%. That's my understanding of democratic socialism.
Secretary Garcia, you wanted to say a quick response, 45 seconds.
Sure, thank you, Jorge. I'll call Maduro a dictator because he is a dictator. And what we need to do is to, along with our allies, make sure that the Venezuelan people get the assistance that they need, that we continue to pressure Venezuela so that they'll have free and fair elections, and also here in the United States, offer temporary protected status, TPS, to Venezuelans. That is something that the Trump administration has failed to do. For all of his big talk about supporting the Venezuelan American community, he has failed. I will not. I also believe that we need to do things like a 21st century Marshall Plan for Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to make the dangerous journey to the United States. And under my administration, we're going to put renewed focus on Latin America. It makes sense. They're our neighbors, and we have a lot of things in common. It also makes sense that
no, we don't have that much in common. First of all,
we have a country like China that is going around the world
because
to
we don't
like
let the cartels
America,
run our
making their own
government like Mexico does.
Strengthening those, the United States needs to strengthen its partnerships in Latin America immediately.
Thank you,
and I will.
Senator Booker, let me ask you about Brazil. After the recent fires in the Amazon, some experts suggested that eating less meat is one way to help the environment. You are a vegan since 2014. That's obviously a personal choice. But President Trump and Brazil's President Bolsonaro are concerned that climate change regulations could affect economic growth. So should more Americans, including those here in Texas and in Iowa, follow your diet?
First of all, I want to say no. Actually, I want to translate that into Spanish. No.
Yeah, this is where our debate is now.
The factory farming going on that's assaulting this corporate consolidation in the agriculture industry. One of the reasons why I have a bill to put a moratorium on this kind of corporate consolidation is because this factory farming is destroying and hurting our environment, and you see independent family farmers being pushed out of business because of the kind of incentives we are giving that don't line up with our values. That's what I'm calling for. But I want to switch because we don't have a crowded debate stage. We were talking about Afghanistan and Iraq. It annoys me that we had a conversation about our troops overseas and we didn't say one word about veterans in our country. We have a shameful reality in America that we send people off to war and they often come home with invisible wounds, hurts, and harms. They're disproportionately homeless. You hear stories about women waiting for months for gynecological care through the VA. It is very important that as a country, understand that we are not going to solve every problem with this outrageous increased militarism, that we also make sure that we stand up for the people that stood for us. We end our national anthem with Home of the Brave. It's about time we make this a better home for our bravest.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Yeah, and since the VA works so well, we need to make that national for everybody. Right, Spartacus?
Greenland is melting at a record pace. The last 5 years have been the hottest ever recorded. And we have a viewer's question about this. What meaningful action will you take to reverse the effect of climate change? And can we count on you to follow through if your donors are against it?
Yes, we will follow through regardless of the political consequences or who it offends, because this is the very future of our planet and our ability for our children and grandchildren to be able to survive on it. We will make sure that we get to net zero greenhouse gas emissions no later than the year 2050, that we are halfway there by 2030, that we mobilize $5 trillion over the next 10 years to do that, that we invest here in Houston, Texas with pre-disaster mitigation grants to protect those communities that are vulnerable to flooding, given the fact that this town has seen 3 500-year floods in just 5 years. You'd like to think you're good for 1,500 years, but you're not. They're coming faster and larger and more devastating than ever. We're also going to make sure that we free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels and embrace renewable wind and solar energy technology, as well as the high-paying, high-skill, high-wage jobs that come along with that. And then we're going to pay farmers for the environmental services that they want to provide, planting cover crops, keeping more land under conservation, using...
Where are you going to get all the money for that?
...pull carbon out of the air and can drive it and sequester it into the soil. That's the way that we're going to meet this challenge, and we're going to bring everyone into the solution.
Many of you want to comment. Let's try to see if we can go very fast. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. This is the existential crisis of our time.
Existential?
It's, that movie, The Day After Tomorrow? It's today. We have seen a warming in our world like never before. We're seeing flooding in the Midwest, flooding in Houston, fires in the West. And I think having someone leading the ticket from the Midwest will allow us to talk about this in a different way and get it done. On day one, I will get us back into the International Climate Change Agreement. On day two, I will bring back the clean power rules that President Obama had worked on. On day three, I will bring back the gas
Which were destroying the economy.
Do all that without Congress, which is good. On day 4, 5, and 6, I will, working with Congress and mayors and business people all over the country, introduce sweeping legislation to get at that 2050 goal. And on day 7, you're supposed to rest, but I won't.
Senator Warren.
This is what we need to do if we're going to get at climate change. We have to take this on as a crisis that's happening right now.
Senator Warren, should American foreign policy be based around the principle of climate change?
Yes. We need to work on every front on climate change. It is the threat to every living thing on this planet, and we are running out of time. Every time.
No, we are not. Give me actual, real scientific data that proves what you're saying.
That means we've got to use all the tools. One of the tools we need to use are our regulatory tools. I have proposed, following Governor Inslee, that we, by 2028, cut all carbon emissions from new buildings, by 2030, carbon emissions from cars, and by 2035, all carbon emissions from the manufacture of electricity. That alone, those three, will cut our emissions here in the United States by 70%. We can do.
Which will do nothing because China and India and third world developing countries are actually the ones that produce the most pollutants on the planet.
As long as Washington is paying more attention to money than it is to our future, we can't make the changes we need to make. We have to attack the corruption head on so that we can save our planet.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds.
When I think about this issue, it really is through the lens of my baby nieces who are 1.5 and 3 years old. When I look at what is going to be the world if we do nothing when they turn 20, I am really scared. And when I've been in the United States Senate for now the last 2.5 years, and I look at our counterparts, the Republicans in the United States Senate, they must be looking at their children, and then when they look at the mirror, I don't know what they see, but it's a lack of courage. And this is an issue that, yes, it represents an existential threat. It is also something we can do something about. This is a problem that was created by human behaviors. And we can change our behaviors in a way that saves our planet. I've seen it happen in California. I took on, as the Attorney General of California, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. I took on the big oil companies, and we saw progress. If any of you have been to Los Angeles 20 years ago, you'll remember that sky was brown. You go there now, the sky is blue, and you know why? Because
what's on the ground, though? Why don't you talk about what's on the ground in Los Angeles, Harris?
We have some of the most important and strongest laws in the country, and we made a difference. And my point being, I've done it before, and I will lead as president on this issue because we have no time. The clock is ticking, but we need courage, and we need courageous leadership. We can get this done.
Mr. Yang.
So to follow up on what Elizabeth said, why are we losing to the fossil fuel companies? Why are we losing to the gun lobby and the NRA? And the answer is this. We all know, everyone on the stage knows, that our government has been overrun by money and corporate interests. Now, everyone here has a plan to try and curb those corporate interests, but we have to face facts. Money finds a way. Money will find its way back in. So what is the answer? The answer is to wash the money out with people-powered money. My proposal is that we give every American 100 democracy dollars that you can only give to candidates and causes that you like. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1. That is the only way we will win. And as someone running for president, I'll tell you, there's the people on one side and the money on the other. The only way for us to win is if we bring them together.
Thank you, Mr. Yang.
So he wants to give monopoly money to people? Are you kidding?
We'll stay with you. Here in Houston, this school
gotta be the
district is
stupidest
facing
thing I've
yet
ever heard in my
another
life.
year of spending cuts. Like schools across the country, the system faces many challenges. One of them, thousands of students are leaving traditional public schools and going to charter schools. You're the most vocal proponent on this stage for charter schools. You have said that Democrats who want to limit them are, quote, just jumping into bed with teachers' unions and doing kids a disservice. Why isn't taxpayer money better spent on fixing traditional public schools?
Let me be clear, I am pro-good school. I've got a kid, one of my little boys just started public school last week, and I was not there because I was running for president.
He couldn't remember that he had a kid?
Pay teachers more because the data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold.
Paying teachers more doesn't resolve anything.
On standardized tests, which do not measure anything fundamental about our character or human worth. But here's the big one. The data clearly shows that 65 to 70% of our students' outcomes are determined outside of the school. We're talking about time spent at home with the parents, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the house, income, type of neighborhood. We're putting money into schools, and educators know this. We're saying you're 100% responsible for educating our kids, but you can only control 30%. They all know this. The answer is to put money directly into the families and neighborhoods to give our kids a chance to learn and our teachers a chance to teach.
Mayor Buttigieg, 45 seconds to respond.
Giving teachers more money isn't going to do anything. Money has been thrown at schools for decades upon decades. It hasn't helped.
Who actually believes in public education.
Public education is garbage. Absolutely, categorically, it's garbage.
Some things are very complex for preparing for a future where knowledge is at your fingertips, but we got to teach more to do with critical thinking and social and emotional learning. Some of it is extremely simple. We've just got to pay teachers more.
He almost says social engineering. Did you see that? Did you see that? He almost said social engineering.
Of friends who hosted exchange students from Japan. They had a student one year who wanted to be a teacher, and they kept in touch with her when she went back to Japan and to college. She took the exam to try to become a teacher in a society that really regards teachers and compensates teachers well. And she came up just short. So you know what she did? Since she was academically good but couldn't quite make the cut to be a teacher, she had a fallback plan. She became a doctor. That is how seriously some countries treat the teaching profession. If we want to get the results that we expect for our children, we have to support and compensate the teaching profession, respect teachers the way we do soldiers, and pay them more like the way we do doctors.
Senator Warren, to use Mr. Yang's term, are you just jumping into bed with teachers' unions?
You know, I think I'm the only person on the stage who has been a public school teacher. I've wanted to be a public school teacher since I was in second grade. And let's be clear in all the ways we talk about this, money for public schools should stay in public schools, not go anywhere else. I've already made my commitment. We will have a Secretary of Education who has been a public school teacher. I think this is ultimately about our values. I have proposed a 2-cent wealth tax on the top 1/10 of 1% in this country. That would give us enough money to start with our babies by providing universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
Raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool
That does
teacher in
nothing.
this country.
Absolutely
Cancel student loan
nothing.
debt for
When the
95%
quality
of
of your
folks
teaching is purely indoctrination, all you're getting is garbage.
Strengthen our unions. This is how we build an America that reflects our values, not just where the money.
Okay, I'm going to have to pause it here. Spooky is going to come on air in just a minute, but I do want to make one quick comment about what she's saying. Unions are the problem. Unions do not allow schools to fire bad teachers. If you wanted good quality teachers, you would let the schools fire bad teachers. The problem is unions do not allow that. Okay? So this is where the problem is. I'm going to click play again, and we're going to get Spook on here.
He comes from with the billionaires and corporate executives.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds to respond.
My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I think most of us would say that we are not where we are without the teachers who believed in us. I have offered in this campaign a proposal to deal with this, which will be the first in the nation federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is $13,500 a year. Because right now in our public schools, our teachers, 94% of them are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. And that is wrong. I also want to talk about where we are here at TSU.
No, it's not wrong. There are plenty of schools, European schools, for example, that let you have to buy all the supplies.
Put $2 trillion into investing in our HBCUs for teachers because one, as a proud graduate of a historically black college and university, I will say that it is our HBCUs that disproportionately produce teachers and those who serve in these many professions. But
Thank you, Senator.
But this is a critical point. If a black child
I believe you,
has
alt-right.
a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college. If that child has had 2 black teachers before the end of 3rd grade, they are 32% more likely to go to college. So when we talk,
Where the hell is she pulling that statistic from?
it is at the source of so much. When we fix it, that will fix so many other things. We must invest in the potential of our children.
Senator
and I
Sanders,
strongly
45 seconds.
believe you can judge a society based on how it treats its children, and we are
Thank you,
failing
Senator.
on this issue.
No, what you're failing on is all the infants that you're killing.
Guess what? You're guessing. All right, here's the answer. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and yet we have the highest child poverty rate of almost any country on earth. We have teachers in this country who are leaving education because they can't work 2 or 3 jobs to support themselves, which is why under my legislation, we will move to see that every teacher in America makes at least $60,000 a year. What we will also do is not only have universal pre-K, we will make public colleges and universities and HBCUs debt-free. And what we will also do, because this is an incredible burden on millions and millions of young people who did nothing wrong except try to get the education they need, we are going to cancel all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
And
Thank
we
you,
are
Senator.
going to do that by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Vice President, I want to come to you and talk to you about
It's all the government loans, back loans that make the money that the government gives universities that make tuition go up.
You told a reporter, I don't feel responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation. And I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago. You said that some 40 years ago. But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility do you think that Americans need to take to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Minus
well,
220.
They have to deal with look, there is institutional segregation in this country. And from the time I got involved, I started dealing with that. Redlining, banks, making sure that we are in a position where, look, we talk about education. I propose that what we take is those very poor schools, the Title I schools, triple the amount of money we spend, from $15 to $45 billion a year. Give every single teacher a raise to the equal raise of getting out the $60,000 level. Number 2, make sure that we bring in to help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have 1 school psychologist for every 1,500 kids in America today. It's crazy. The teachers are retired. I'm married to a teacher. My deceased wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does, in fact, have 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes and parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help, they don't know quite what to do. Play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. A kid
Can you
coming
get
from
through
a very
one
poor
sentence?
School, a very poor background will hear
the guy's
4 million
babbling all
words
over the
fewer
place.
spoken by the time they get there. There's
Thank you,
so
Mr.
much
Vice President.
No, I'm going to go like the rest of them do, twice over, okay? Because
He's had so much extra time that they gave him.
We've got this a little backwards. And by the
When
way,
they come out
in
with that stat at
Venezuela,
the end.
we should be allowing people to come here from Venezuela. I know Maduro. I've confronted Maduro. Number two, you talk about the need to do something in Latin America. I'm the guy that came up with $740 million to see to it those 3 countries, in fact, change their system so people don't have a chance to leave. You're all acting like we just discovered this yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Secretary Castro.
Thank you very much. Well, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, I don't think you won anybody over with that.
I grew up in one of those neighborhoods that folks have talked about, in a neighborhood that was grappling with the legacy of segregation. In fact, in two public school districts that were involved in a 1973 Supreme Court case challenging how Texas financed its schools. And I know that today, our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated.
Right.
Now, I have an education plan, like a lot of folks up here, that would pay teachers more, that would recruit diverse ranks of teachers, that would invest in our public schools. But I also believe that we have to connect the dots to uplift the quality of life, to invest in housing opportunity, to invest in job opportunity, to invest in community schools that offer resources like parents able to go back and get their GED, and healthcare opportunities, and those things that truly ensure that the entire family can prosper. Those are the types of things that we need to do, in addition to lifting up our public schools. You asked a second ago about charter schools. Look, it is a myth that charter schools are better than public schools. They're not.
Charter schools are good. Sometimes.
Actually, that's false. Charter schools generally are better. They have private schools have a better quality. Homeschooling is actually best in terms of quality of education.
Senator Booker, coming to you now. It was 65 years ago this year that the Supreme Court outlawed racial segregation in public schools.
Charter schools,
Yet
it
for
depends on the
millions of students of color
administrative
today,
people running it,
segregation
though.
remains a reality.
Well, true.
There have been some horror stories with that too, but for the in general, it's
those in
good.
white districts. This means older books, less access to computers, and often worse outcomes. What is your plan to address segregation? And I'm not just talking about the achievement gap, but I'm talking about the opportunity gap in education.
So I'm hearing a lot of conversations on the stage and the way we talk about communities of color. Look, I live in a black and brown community below the poverty line. I've lived in public housing projects almost for a decade and saw the anguish of parents.
I live in a black and brown community. Let me out.
They don't have a school that serves their genius. I think I'm the only person on the stage, even though I had no formal authority as mayor to run a school system, I stepped up and took responsibility for our schools. And we produced results. A lot of folks here talking about raising teacher salary. We actually did it in Newark, New Jersey. And we didn't stop there. We closed poor performing charter schools, but dagnabbit, we expanded high performing charter schools. We were a city that said we need to find local solutions that work for our community. The results speak for themselves. We're now the #1 city in America for beat the odds schools, from high poverty to high performance. Strategies like investing in our children work. And I'll tell you this, I am tired of us thinking about these problems isolated, disconnected from other issues. That's why my friend Secretary Castro is 100% right. We are in the reality we are right now because, Vice President, of overtly racist policies, not 400 years ago, just in my lifetime, that we're redlining communities, disinvesting in communities. And more than just that, my kids are not only struggling with racial segregation and housing and the challenges of underfunded schools, but they're also struggling with environmental injustice. If you've talked to someone who's a parent of a child who's had permanent brain damage because of lead, you'll know this is a national problem because there's over 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan.
Thank you.
And so if I'm president of the United States, it is a holistic solution to education, from raising teacher salary, fully funded special education, but combating the issues of poverty, combating the issues of racial segregation, combating the issues of a criminal justice system that takes parents away from their kids, and dealing with environmental justice as a major pillar of any climate policy.
Thank you, Lindsay. One final question coming up. We'll be right back.
Thank God this torture is coming to a close. This is brutal. I mean, Can you imagine? Can you imagine if a white candidate said something similar along those lines? They would have crucified him, tarred and feathered him, and set him on fire for being racist. But since it's an Asian guy saying it, oh no, it's okay for an Asian guy to follow the Asian stereotypes. Give me a break. It's ridiculous. And then this whole argument about the schools, I'll just briefly say this and I can let you chime in, Spook, sorry. But this whole school thing, I was just said it before. Unions are the problems. They will not allow bad teachers to be fired. That's one of the biggest issues that we have in schools today. Throwing all this money isn't going to help anything. And lastly, I was, in my university days, there was nothing preventing people from like segregating themselves. Students would segregate themselves. The black students would be with the black students, the Asians would be with the Asians, the whites would be mostly with the whites, and the Latinos with the Latinos. People segregate themselves. Go ahead. Yeah. And it's normal. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Like, if you're French, you're going to be more comfortable with other people that are raised in that environment, other French people. If you're Indian, you're going to be more comfortable with folks from India. If you're Italian, you're going to be more comfortable with people that are Italian because they're going to be, you share that common culture and background and ethnicity. It's just normal. There's nothing necessarily like wrong with that. I never thought of it as wrong. But you yeah, it's kind of built into human nature. And there's nothing necessarily like racist or discriminatory or whatever.
We're behind the scenes at the ABC News debate here at Texas Southern University, and
I'm just talking. Right? Okay, we can ignore that. I win the debate. Thank you, Meave. Woo! No, there's one last question. They're just doing a quick break, I guess, for the final, because everybody's going to have the little final blurb. Yeah. Well, Kamala Harris had a horrible performance. Let me just put that. I'm going to say that she probably did the worst. She was the worst one on there. I think she just was terrible. Yeah. Yeah, no, she was like, she basically insulted the what's his name, Stephen Papadopoulos, whatever his face is, and then she did this other thing about doing. They asked her about the executive orders that she wants to put in place about guns, and Biden actually, to his credit, I don't usually, I give credit where credit is due. Biden actually said something correct, where he said, because she was like, well, how about we don't say what we can't do, but what we can do, and Biden said, well, how about we are constitutional? What baloney. She did horribly. She dodged questions left and right, lied all the time. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I noticed throughout the entire night was this entire contradiction that kept happening back and forth, because they kept saying we shouldn't be the police of the world, but we need to give money to foreign countries to help them. But we shouldn't be involved in wars, but we need to pull out immediately of these things and give money and help these countries' economies and climate stuff and all that. So they kept saying on one side they don't want to be interventionists, but on the other side it's like, well, we got to give them all this money and be interventionists. And it's like, well, listen, it's either one or the other. You can't say let's not be interventionists and then be interventionists. But here we go.
From the opening statement, and candidates, the question is on the quality of resilience. No president can succeed without resilience. Every president confronts crises, defeats, and mistakes. So I want to ask each of you, what's the most significant professional setback you've had to face? How did you recover from it? And what did you learn from it? Vice President Biden.
I never counted any professional setback I have as a serious setback.
Wait, can you pause real quick?
There's things that are important, things that aren't.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Chat. Can you guys hear me? I gotta know because chat's fucking with me. At this point, I'm like really starting. Get on! Fuck you, chat. Okay, sorry, we can play.
Well,
Fuck you, chat. Fuck! I got fucking destroyed.
Whoa.
Huh?
What happened?
We're going to clear the protesters now. Just 1 minute.
Sorry, chat.
Wait. Let me go back a second.
Bigger deal.
Hold on. Sorry.
I'm gonna go back to.
Just one question for each candidate. We're going to go in reverse order from the opening
He
statement.
goes.
And candidates, the question is on the quality of resilience.
I'm at -3.
No president can succeed without resilience. Every president
3-2.
confronts crises, defeats, and mistakes. So I want to ask each of you, what's the most significant professional setback you've had to face? How did you recover from it? And what did you learn from it? Vice President Biden.
I never counted any professional setback I have as a serious setback. There's things that are important, things that aren't important.
We're going to clear the protesters now. Just 1 minute.
What? We are.
We are the Borg. Resistance is futile.
Senator Biden, we'll start the clock again.
He's a crying. He looks
Wow,
like he's gonna
look
at his,
how
look at his lip quiver.
defeated.
Sorry.
Look at his lip quiver.
Yeah.
Wow,
There's
he is
setbacks
wrecked.
and there's setbacks. And I think the most
Hey, look at the
critical
Biden coin
setback
now.
that can occur to anyone
Who's looking
is
at that?
to,
Candy?
Lose. Well, my dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up. And he used to say, never explain and never complain. And then go on to say that the only obligation that really matters, the most important thing, is family.
I heard that
So
recently.
I was raised to believe that that was the center of everything, family. And it could be judged on based how you treat your family and how you went from there. And it took, Kierkegaard said, faith sees best in the dark. Right after I got elected, my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, and my two sons are badly injured. And I just been elected, not sworn in. And I lost my faith for a while. I came back. And then later, when my son Bo came home from Iraq and with a terminal disease, and a year and a half later, losing him was like losing part of my soul. But the fact is that I learned that the way you deal with it is you deal with finding purpose in what you do. And that's why I hope he's proud of me today, because he wanted to make sure I didn't run for president, but I stayed engaged. Because when you get hit badly, whether you're losing a job or you're raising a family like my dad, where You have to make that longest walk up the stairs to tell your kid you can't live here anymore. Dad lost his job. You know, we've all went through that, some form or another. And it just for me, the way I've dealt with it is finding purpose. And my purpose is do what I've always tried to do and stay engaged in public policy. But there's a lot of people that through a lot worse than I have, get up every single morning, put their feet one foot in front of another without the help I had. They're real heroes out there. Some
Thank
real
you, Mr.
heroes.
Vice President. Senator Warren.
I mentioned earlier, I've
That's
known
right,
what I
cunt.
wanted to be since second grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher. And I invested early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation for being tough but fair. By the time I graduated from high school, my family didn't have money for a college application, much less to send me off to 4 years at a university. And my story, like a lot of stories, has a lot of twists and turns. Got a scholarship, and then at 19, got married, dropped out of school, took a minimum wage job, thought my dream was over. I got a chance down the road at the University of Houston. And I made it as a special needs teacher. I still remember that first year as a special needs teacher. I could tell you what those babies looked like. I had 4 to 6-year-olds. But at the end of that first year, I was visibly pregnant. And back in the day, that meant that the principal said to me, wished me luck, and hired someone else for the job. So there I am. I'm at home, I got a baby, I can't have a job. What am I gonna do? Here's resilience. I said, I'll go to law school. And the consequence
Well, he's going to need to
was-
fill your slot pretty soon.
Yeah, screw raising the kid. Don't worry about the kid. You know.
And then went
Honestly.
back to my first love, which is teaching.
Your bad decisions
But
is
it
on
let
someone
me
else,
get
of course.
into fights, it gave me new tools. And the reason I'm standing here today is because
What about
I got
raising
back
your
up.
baby?
I fought back.
It'd be really nice if that
I
was
wanna
somebody's
be in
greatest
the fight
love.
to fix it in America.
Cunt.
Thank you,
That's why I'm
Senator.
here.
Senator Sanders.
Resilience to me means growing up in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York.
She could be, Mark. I don't know.
Immigrant who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. Professional resilience means to me, George, running for U.S. Senate in Vermont and getting 1% of the vote. Running for governor and getting 2% of the vote. Finally becoming mayor of Burlington, Vermont with 10-vote margin. What resilience means to me is that throughout my political career, I have taken on virtually every powerful special interest in this country. Whether it is
Yet haven't proposed and passed any significant piece of legislations in your entire career. Interesting.
whether it is the pharmaceutical industry whose corruption and greed is killing people today, whether it is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial complex. And I feel confident that given a lifelong record of taking on powerful special interests, of standing up for the working families of this country, that I will be able to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Harris.
You know, every office I've run for, whether it be district attorney or attorney general, I was told each time, it can't be done. They said, nobody like you has done it before. Nobody is ready for you. When I ran for DA, I won and became the first black woman elected DA in a state of 40 million people in the
You're technically not a black woman, lady, but whatever.
General California. I was elected because I didn't listen. And I was the only woman black elected attorney general in the state, in the country. And each time people would say, it's not your time, it's not your turn, it's going to be too difficult, they're not ready for you. And I didn't listen, and a part of it probably comes from the fact that I was raised by a mother who said many things that were life lessons for me, including, don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are. And when I look around the town halls that we do in this race for President of the United States, and I look at the meetings that we do in the community meetings, and I see these little girls and boys, sometimes even brought by their fathers, and they bring them to me, and I talk to them during these events, and they smile, and they're full
Yeah,
of
that's
joy.
true. People may not have been ready for you because of the fact that you prostituted yourself to get into the political positions that you're in.
What you can or cannot be. You have to believe in what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Believe in laying on your back.
Mayor Buttigieg.
You know, as a military officer serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and as an elected official in the state of Indiana when Mike Pence was governor, at a certain point, when it came to professional setbacks, I had to wonder whether just acknowledging who I was going to be the ultimate career-ending professional setback. I came back from the deployment and realized that you only get to live one life, and I was not interested in not knowing what it was like to be in love any longer. So I just came out. I had no idea what kind of professional setback it would be, especially because, inconveniently, it was an election year in my socially conservative community. What happened was that when I trusted voters to judge me based on the job that I did for them, they decided to trust me and reelected me with 80% of the vote. And what I learned was that trust can be reciprocated, and that part of how you can win and deserve to win is to know what's worth more to you than winning. And I think that's what we need in the presidency right now. We have to know what we are about. And this election is not about any of us up here. It is not about this president.
Yet you just went into a whole diatribe about yourself.
Some days. It's about the people who trust us with their lives. A kid wondering if we're actually going to make their schools safe when they've learned active shooter drills before they've learned to read. A generation wondering whether we will actually get the job done on climate change. And if we hold to that, then it doesn't matter what happens to each of us professionally. Together, we will win a better era for our country.
I hope so. I hope we get the climate change figured out.
Mr. Yang.
I would hope so too.
I was an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months, and I left to start a business. And I'm going to
Mayor
share with you
Buttgay.
all one of the secrets to entrepreneurship. If you want to start something, tell everyone you know you're going to do it. And then you don't have a choice. You put your heart and soul into it, and even though I did that, my company flopped, had its mini rise and maximum fall, lost investors hundreds of thousands of dollars, still owed $100,000 in school debt. My parents still told people I was a lawyer. I guess it was a little easier. So I remember lying on my floor, looking up, wondering how it had come to this. Eventually, I picked myself back up. I kept working in small growth companies for another 10 years and eventually had some success.
That's exactly what I want to hear from a future leader of the world. I was laying on the floor and I didn't know what to do.
It feels like your friends no longer
I was writhing on the
spend time
floor,
with you.
foaming at the mouth.
I spent 7 years starting and running a nonprofit that helped train young entrepreneurs around the country,
Looking at
including
tranny
Sean Wen,
porn.
who's here in the audience tonight, who left his gilded Wall Street job to become a food entrepreneur in San Antonio. Sean, I hope I made the process a little bit easier for you than it was for me. But the goal of my campaign is to make this an economy that allows us to live our human values and aspirations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Booker.
So my biggest professional setback is embarrassing because a lot of folks know about it. With a bunch of tenant leaders in Newark, New Jersey in 2002, took on the political machine, and boy, did they fight back. I had tires on my car slashed, our campaign offices were broken into, my phones were tapped. It became a spectacle, and we lost that election. And here's a bit of advice to everybody. If you're going to have a spectacular failure, have a documentary team there to capture it, because it made for an Oscar-nominated documentary called Street Fight. But then, unfortunately, another setback, it lost in the Oscars to a movie called March of the Dagnab Penguins, for crying out loud. The people in my community.
Hey, what you got against black and white birds, racist?
Give up on you. Create bigger and bolder coalitions, and you're going to win. And you know what? We came back 4 years later and won the largest lopsided victory in our city's history. But more than that, the lesson was there. We didn't give up. We were taking on America's toughest problems, from crime to poverty, and we transformed our city, creating tens of thousands of new jobs, the biggest economic expansion in our city, and as I said before, turned around our school system. There's more work to do, but I haven't given up on the
Laura
people.
Loomer
I
is like
still
running
live in
for
that community,
some, I think
but
it's
this is
either
the big
a
lesson.
representative position or I think it's a representative
Told
position.
me, if you want to go fast, you may have won the mayor's race, but that's not what life is about. There's an old African saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. The lesson I learned of resilience is to trust people, because the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And the test of America right now, it's not a referendum on Donald Trump, it's a referendum on us and who we are and who we're going to be together. We need to use this moment in history to unite in common cause and common purpose, and then there's nothing we can't do together as a nation.
Senator Booker, thank you. Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, George. Everything that I've learned about resilience, I've learned from my hometown of El Paso, Texas. In the face of this act of terror, that was
Resilience in hitting a person with your car, killing them, and running away while drunk.
people and injured many more. We were not defeated by that, nor were we defined by that. The very thing that drew that killer to us is the very thing that helps us set the example for the rest of this country. We don't see our differences as disqualifying or dangerous. We see them as foundational to our success, to our strength, and to our security, and to our safety. Yesterday, I was visiting with one of those victims. He's the head coach of the Fusion. This is a girls' soccer team of 10 and 11-year-old girls. His name is Luis.
There's
He
an
was
old
shot
African
in the
saying,
legs
if you want to go
multiple
fast,
times. He
go
was
alone.
shot
If you want to go
in the
far,
side
steal a bike.
He's still healing from his wounds in the hospital, but from his hospital
love
bed,
Bitwave
he's still
chat
trying
sometimes.
to coach the Fusion girls soccer team. Memo, his co-coach, is still fighting for his life right now at Del Sol Hospital. Those two men, Jessica and Marcella, their wives, they exemplify resilience to me. And when we end this scourge,
Did you have that
of
sort
gun
of
violence in
compassion
this
to the
country,
person you hit with
when
your car?
we finally confront the racism that exists in America, when we're defined not by our fears, but instead by our aspirations and our ambitions, it will be in large part, I think, thanks to the example that El Paso has set.
Congressman,
Thank you.
No, sorry, they're from my computer. I can't shut it off for some reason.
My challenges and resilience have brought me up here. I grew up with a dad who struggled with alcoholism his whole life, and after his third DWI, he had a choice between jail and treatment. He chose treatment with his faith, with his friends, with our family, and in his words, he was pursued by grace. And that made me interested in public service because I feel like everyone should have that same right to be pursued by grace. I then got married. My husband's out there somewhere, hopefully smiling, and our daughter. And our daughter was born. I had this expectation we were going to have this perfect birth, and she was really sick, and she couldn't swallow, and she was in and out of hospitals for a year and a half. But when she was born, they had a rule in place that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. She was in intensive care, and I was kicked out. And I thought, this could never happen to any other mom again. So I went to the legislature, our state legislator, not an elected official, a mom, and I advocated for one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And when they tried to delay the implementation of that law, I brought 6 pregnant friends to the conference committee, so they outnumbered the lobbyists 2 to 1. And when they said, when should it take place, they all raised their hand and said, now. That is what motivated me to go into public service. And when I got to that gridlock of Washington, D.C., I got to work and pass over 100 bills. And I know a lot of my friends here from the left, but remember, I am from the middle of the country. And I believe if we're going to get things done, that we have to have someone leading the ticket with grit, someone's going to not just change the policies, but change the tone in the country, and someone who believes in America and believes it from their heart because of where they came from, that everyone
Lady,
should
you're a
have that same
psychopath that eats
opportunity.
salads with a
thank you.
comb.
Secretary Castro.
You're insane.
Thank you, George, to Jorge, to Lindsay, and to David, and to all of y'all for tuning in tonight. In many ways, I shouldn't be here
Don't
on
talk
this
about
stage.
Shrek's wife like that.
Castro
He's
is
gonna kick your ass.
my mother's name
She
and
can
was
try.
my grandmother's name before her. I grew up in a single-parent household on the west side
No,
of San
you shouldn't be
Antonio,
here. None
going
of
to
you
the public
should.
schools. Eventually, my brother Joaquin and I became the first in our family to become professionals. And
Well, listen,
when I got home,
I don't care if
I
they
took a
came
job at
legally
the biggest law firm in
and they
town.
went through the entire
I was making
process. They didn't try and do any
$100,000 a year in
shortcuts.
the year 2000. A few months later,
I'm
I got
good
elected to the San Antonio
with
City
legal
Council,
immigrants.
and the city council at the time was only paying $1,040 a year. So everybody had another job, and my job was at the law firm. Well, a few months after I got elected, the law firm got a client, and the client wanted those of us on the city council to vote for a land deal. The land deal was that they wanted to build a golf course over our water supply because we relied on an underground aquifer. I didn't think the environmental protection plan was strong enough, so I wanted to vote against it, and my constituents wanted me to vote against it. But under the ethics rules for lawyers in Texas, because believe it or not, lawyers have ethics rules, you can't just go against the interests of a client, so I was stuck. On the one hand, I wanted to do the right thing. On the other hand, my livelihood, my student loans, my new house payment, my car payment depended on me shutting up, being conflicted out. So one day I walked into my law firm.
Or, just doing your job.
And then I went and I voted against that land deal on the city council. And, it was the first test that I had. And I think back to that because oftentimes we think of politics and you think of politics as dirty or corrupting. I wondered before I went in it whether it would change who I was. And I was proud that when that first test came, that I stood up for the people that I was there to represent and not for big special interests. There's nobody that gets tested more in a position of public trust than the President of the United States. This president has failed that test. But I want you to know that if you elect me president, I won't. I won't serve anybody except you and your family. And together, we can create an America that's better than ever. Thank you very much.
Secretary Castro, thank you to all of our candidates. It was a great debate. I think we learned a lot tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to Texas Southern University for hosting us tonight. It was a great crowd as well tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to everyone at home.
All right.
The debate is over. Our coverage continues.
Debate's done.
What have we learned today?
Well, I've learned that the Democrats are all liars, spinners, and they're even farther left extreme than I already knew them to be. And then you have people on stage like Yang who is advocating of buying votes.
They only let him there because they knew beforehand he was going to say stupid things, and then everybody was just going to be able to laugh at him. So his Yang coin goes through the floor as he just gets laughed at by all of his opponents.
Well, he didn't do very well, honestly. Like he started out kind of strong, but then throughout the rest of the debate, he just really kind of looked bad. Kamala Harris looked horrible. She just could not pull herself together because she looked like a fool, an absolute.
You know
fool.
who they didn't let there, even though she qualified?
Tulsi.
Tulsi.
Yeah.
She would have destroyed everybody, and you fucking know it.
I don't know about that. I mean, the problem with Tulsi is that she puts this veneer of moderation around her. But back in 2016, she was a she-Bernie, basically. She supported all of Bernie Sanders' policies.
Okay, but we're talking right now. That's
It doesn't
the thing.
matter.
We're talking
She doesn't change.
right
She didn't
now.
change in
We're
2
talking
years.
about the board right now.
Yeah, but she didn't change. I can guarantee you she hasn't changed. Her policies.
Tulsi would have murdered everybody tonight.
I saw.
Not somebody.
I saw a interview that she did with oh shoot, what's his name?
The Rubin one?
Yes, Dave Rubin.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that started off really strong, and then there was this section of like, oh my god, what am I hearing?
Yeah, she started out, and that's what I'm saying about her. She can do well for a period of time. Sorry, I'm moving my microphone here because I'm a little uncomfortable.
You're good.
She starts out very strong, and she does have this air of. I will give her credit that she does have an air of reasonableness about her. She seems to be someone who can be reasonable on certain things. I mean, I agree, for example, that I don't want endless wars. And she
Well, but
said,
all you would need here is one really, really solid response, because none of them had a really, really, really solid response to anything.
well, Biden...
And Tulsi would have been able to provide a really strong response to something. Biden was destroyed. Biden got those protesters, and that didn't alone do anything to him, but that quiver on his lip, death blow.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, Biden, the problem with him was he started out, again, at the beginning of the night, he had this small burst of energy, started relatively well, and then he just started he already started slurring.
Then his Viagra stopped fucking working.
Yeah, basically his whole thing, he started going downhill relatively quick, and then those protesters basically were the knife in the back, and he wasn't able to, like, he just cowered. You see how he just crumpled?
Mm-hmm. This was a fucking shit show. Yeah, if they let Tulsi in there, she would have tactically murdered everybody, dude.
I don't know. I don't quite agree with that because I don't think she did that well in the other debates. She did all right.
Really? She fucking trended globally, and then Google shut her down. Unbelievable.
Because she only did well against Kamala Harris, because she attacked the top person at the time, which was Kamala Harris. That's why she caught people's attention. It doesn't necessarily mean she did a good job.
She would have looked around the room and went boom headshot, boom headshot. You hear that car in the background?
I don't hate her, Soldat. I don't hate Tulsi. I just see her for what she is. She's a Bernieite. She's a she-burn, call her. I don't know, call her whatever you want. She's actually has very far left policies. Very extreme. And she's a hypocrite.
But they all do. They all are. That's the thing.
Well, okay.
But she at least has some moderate positions on things that really matter right now, like PC culture.
I don't know anything about her when it comes to PC culture. I haven't heard one single iota of her saying she's against PC culture. What I have heard from her is that she is more of a unifying voice. That I have heard. I haven't heard her fight PC culture at all, frankly.
Well, she's fucking suing Google. That's pretty big.
Well, but that's not fighting PC culture. That's fight. She got hit by what us conservatives have been experiencing for years, and now all of a sudden she has a cow over because she's being affected by it. But when people were constantly saying online, we're being censored, we're being silenced, we're being attacked, I never saw her stand up for conservatives going, you know what, you're right. She never said that. She didn't give a crap.
Okay, but she's saying right now, if Google can censor a member of Congress running for president, they can censor anyone. So it doesn't matter, blah, 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 anything before that right there.
No, it matters because...
That right there is what matters. That is what matters. Because the narrative that she's talking right now is all that fucking matters.
Wrong. Because during this same year, you had other elections happening, and there were Republicans that their ads were being closed down and shut down, not being displayed on Twitter, and their account got banned, got temporarily suspended before hers. But because it was a Republican Party person that was running in that campaign, she didn't give a rat's ass about it. And that's why I'm talking about the hypocrisy.
So she's inconsistent. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. No, it matters to you, but it doesn't matter. That's the thing. That's the thing. People are going to see what she's doing right now. And she's saying right now, if Google can censor a member of Congress running for president, they can censor anyone.
And you know what?
And that's a pretty good stance to have people like that.
It is. And I will give her credit for that. And I will give her credit for suing Google. People should have done that sooner. She should have done that sooner. Other people of Congress should have done that sooner.
Nobody else on that stage would say anything like that.
Well, and again, I will give her credit for that.
Did you look into Pimplegate?
The Pimplegate?
Did you look into Pimplegate? Do you know about Pimplegate?
I'm not aware of Pimplegate.
Okay. So the first debate, the one where she trended worldwide,
yeah. I know about Pimplegate. I'm sorry.
They superimposed a pimple on her, and if you look at the timestamps of when they started it and when they ended it, they started the moment she started talking. She had a huge anti-war rant that conservatives liked, or like more. I'm not saying conservatives, but I'm saying like the more moderate and right moderate people that probably voted for Trump liked. The moment she started talking about that pimple. The moment she brings up illegal immigrants, it dissipates. I'm not even fucking joking you.
Yeah, no,
we watched it on my stream. We went frame by frame.
I did. I saw it on your stream. That's right.
Yeah.
I did. I remember that. But and like I said, I'm giving her credit for that. I'm giving her credit for the fact that they manipulated her video, like they've manipulated Trump's videos in certain local news where they made him orange, they made his mouth bigger, they made him just more grotesque and manipulated the timing of the video so it looked like he was licking his lip for a continuous like 10 seconds, for example. So what she's experiencing, what conservatives are experiencing. And I will give her credit for acting on it, but she's still a freaking hypocrite because as long as it didn't touch her, she was fine with it. She didn't give a crap about it. She didn't comment about how bad it was for like them to do that to Trump, for example. So, but again, I will give her credit, and I'm glad that she's suing Google. But I don't think that's going to solve anything because I did the stream 2 nights ago on Monday, Tuesday, about that. Where, okay, you break up Google. You have Senator Warren wants to break up Google. You have Tulsi Gabbard now that's suing Google. They want to break it up and make it into smaller companies. Well, guess what? Silicon Valley and the big tech companies are all mostly left-leaning. You break it up, what's that's going to do? You're just going to make it into smaller chunks. You're not necessarily going to break up that influence, because it's just going to be divided into smaller things. And you know what? You know why Yahoo is doing so horribly for so many years? Because a Google executive, senior executive, had left Google and became the CEO of Yahoo. I find that very coincidental that Yahoo started going downhill, supremely downhill, when this Google executive went to Yahoo to compete against her former employer. I am willing to bet money that she actually was sabotaging Yahoo to help Google become even more powerful than it was. Because back then it was powerful. Now it's even more powerful.
Do you Yahoo?
I used to. I used to Lycos, baby. I'm aging myself on that one. But
Khan thinks Biden should be the president of the United States because his wife and a few kids died. Come on, have a heart, fella. He brought up his deceased wife twice, I think, and his deceased children.
Yeah.
At least once.
Well, listen, that's a tragedy for anybody. And, all kiddings aside and, political animosity aside, losing a loved one is a horrible thing. Okay. Yes, Yahoo dominated early email, G. Gallon, that's right. Yahoo was king for a period of time. It was very, very much the main search engine to go to. Then Google came along and dethroned them. MSNBC is saying Harris had a great night. Wow. But anyways, just go ahead.
No, I was just laughing at that. Fucking silly.
It is. It's so dumb. No, but I was just gonna say really quickly about Biden bringing up like the tragedy that he's experienced in his life. Yeah, that's a terrible thing. But guess what? Everybody experiences tragedy in their life in one form or another. They experience trauma in one form or another. I have, you have, I'm sure. Everybody in chat probably has it one form or another. To me, yes, that is something that a person can learn from, but that's also something that may be a detriment to someone if they don't know how to deal with that trauma and that tragedy. So it's a double-edged sword to bring up something like that, saying, "Oh, I've been through all this, so I can deal with this." Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know what your psychological state is, and from what I've seen from Joe Biden, I'm not too confident about his psychological state.
Marianne 2020? What?
Marianne Williamson's post-debate commentary?
She's behind a podium.
The juju lady with the bad karma and the crystal. Well, actually, she claims she never used crystal.
Dark psychic forces.
Yes, thank you. That was what she said. Dark psychic forces.
How many cats do you think she has? That's the one question I would ask.
I'm willing to guess maybe around, I would say between 6 and 11. That would be
I was going to say at least 3. Okay, that's.
3 for sure. Miss Presidential Energy, and she always talks in a very breathy way. I don't understand how she talks. It's very. I mean, I'm not saying I have the best voice in the world. For Pete's sake, I know that my voice is not awesome in any way. It's not a radio voice. It's not a operatic voice or anything like that. But when people just talk breathy all the time, that's just weird to me. It's like she's
My
on
voice is the shit.
Yeah. Well, you're spooks.
It's the fucking best, dude.
Yeah.
I love it. I listen to my own voice to get to sleep. It's awesome.
You sing to yourself like in the Jungle Book, the snake, go to sleep, go to sleep.
Are you watching the Marianne or no?
No, it's getting late for me. I'm a working stiff, unfortunately, so I got to make preparations to wind down this and get myself ready for tomorrow.
I hear ya.
Yeah. No, you guys can definitely Spook, if you want to jump on your own stream and start playing that. I mean, by all means, you can.
I might take a look at that, but there's a few. There were some links that I dropped on you, 3 things. But if you don't want to, I mean, if you're getting ready to go to bed, I could just cover those later.
Let's see.
The one in the one in your chat. The one in your chat talks about. It was put out today before the debate. It says how to win the debate. And the guy says basically, get people to relate to you. And then he brings up a bunch, I don't know, it's just really, really terrible. And then I sent 2 links to you. One was Julian Castro's policies for 2020, disarming hate.
Yes.
And combating white nationalism.
Yeah.
And then there's the Cory Booker, his imaginary drug dealer. He fucking faked it. Faked it.
Well, half the stuff that they were saying in the debate was factually inaccurate, and at best, it was a smudge, smudge of the truth at best, straight out lie at worst. Like everything that Kamala Harris said, you could debunk it. It has been debunked. Senator Booker, I did not make up T-Bone. I thought you would call yourself Senator Spartacus. T-Bone is a real person. So wait a minute. So now in Bitwave chat we have Rush Limbaugh, Maxine Waters, Senator Booker.
Very diverse cast.
Yeah. Am I missing someone else? I think I'm missing someone else.
We don't really have a Trump.
No, we don't have a Trump. No.
We had a Hill dial for a second there.
True.
That was Hitler.
Yep. We have a Disney as well. Yes, we do have Disney.
Well, they call us, they'd probably, if they could, they'd probably call us alt-right, but we banned Hitler.
Yes, so that definitely makes us non-alt-right at that point.
Yeah, and we have Maxine Waters here, so.
And Maxine Waters, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, you're right. We did have a Trump for a very brief period of time. We had a Trump for a week. Yeah, that's right. I remember. I vaguely remember him.
Yeah, Remy probably lost the password.
Probably, yeah. So basically, I guess, in wrapping up this debate, I guess, to me, if I have to score who I think did the best and who did the worst, I would have to say, oh, man, it's really hard to pick a best because I felt like all of them did really bad, honestly.
You should start with the worst, to be honest, because that's what I'm thinking, too.
Okay, well, for me, the worst was Kamala Harris, honestly. I felt that she gave nothing, no real answers. She dodged all the questions. The few things that she said were completely factually inaccurate, and some were just straight out lies. And
she dodged.
She just
looked
looked
like a question too.
Oh God, yeah, she dodged 2-3 questions, and then she just looked like a complete fool, laughing and chuckling like a moron the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, she just really, really performed. I mean, I don't know, was she drunk?
And on top of that, the voice. You can't, with that voice, it's not happening.
Trump won. Yeah, Trump won this debate. I agree, Troll 550C. In terms of the ones that had a slightly better performance, I would say, like I say, it varied in the night. Biden at first he came out really strong, though he came out slurring right from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But then he just kind of like as the night progressed, he just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Bernie, he just sounded...
Well, Andy, you can't not mention the fucking protest shit.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like he got worse and worse, and then at the end, yeah, you're right with the protest thing.
He could not handle that.
He just completely crumpled. He just kind of folded into himself. Like that is not presidential material. I'm sorry. If you have a couple protesters yelling at you, that's how you behave. You just kind of look down like a child.
Dude, imagine being Trump watching this and getting a BJ from Ivanka. It's like
Christ. From Ivanka of all people, come on, at least.
Not Ivanka. What's her name?
Melania.
Melania. Yeah. Oops. I was thinking Melania.
No, you were thinking Ivanka.
No.
You sicko. You sick. No, I'm kidding. Anyways, yeah, no. Booker didn't really have that much. I don't think he had a lot of time to talk, honestly. And the stuff that he said was really kind of dumb. So he just kind of par for course for him. There was nothing special about what he did. Warren, if she was gonna say it one more time, let me be clear. I was gonna throw my laptop out the window. She has. I don't know. I can understand that she's a teacher. She elicits that response that I have for teachers when I was a kid. I hated school. I mean, I did relatively well in school because I was pretty much an autodidact. I studied all the time by myself. I didn't really care for teachers or their lectures or anything like that. And I hated teachers because they never made any logical sense to me. They spoke stupidly all the time. I didn't like it. She elicits that same kind of like, I feel like I'm in school again. Fly on in for September 11th. Yeah. That who... Yeah.
I think that even though Yang was like super silly, I don't think he lost that much because I think he didn't lose any support, but he was never going to gain any. That's why they let him in.
Yeah, I don't think he really did. He didn't do much for his cause, and the fact that he's blatantly calling out, he's trying to buy votes. I still cannot believe that.
Yeah, that's nuts.
How can that?
He's going to give 10 people 100,000 votes. Is that what it was? Well, sorry. He's going to give 10 people $1,000 a month.
Yes.
That's what I meant.
Was it for a year? He said he was going to do that.
I don't know. I don't know what the time limit was. You guys should go and fucking like and subscribe Yang Gang real quick because I guess he doesn't even have to win. You just win the fucking lottery real quick.
You know what's funny? I actually I tweet. Excuse me. I'm turning into Bernie Sanders. I can't talk anymore. I got phlegm.
He sounded like he was fucking like the Thing. What's the guy? The rock guy from Fantastic Four?
It's clobbering time.
Yeah, that's what he sounded like.
Yeah. I'm part of the Fantastic Four now. But there's only one of me. So I get all the money. I do terrible impressions. But anyways, the point is, what the hell was the matter with his voice? He sounded like I didn't even think he was going to last through the entire debate. I thought he was going to lose his voice or just keel over.
He was kept asking for water, and his assistant was like, "No, this voice is working for you. Just go." He's like, "Water, give me water." He's just thirsty.
I need water. I have to say, though, of all the impressions that I've heard of Bernie Sanders, I don't know why. I still love Steven Crowder's, Gilbert Gottfried's version of Bernie Sanders. I don't know why. That just makes me laugh so much. I'm a democratic socialist.
Shit.
I'm not going to call Maduro a dictator. But he's a bad guy.
Crowder's Trump is one of the better ones.
He does a good job with the Trump. I still can't do Trump very well. Trump has a very peculiar voice. It's kind of hard to do him. You know.
Election at Bernie's.
Yeah, yeah. I'm probably gonna cringe listening to myself trying to do Bernie Sanders as Gilbert Gottfried now. If I re-listen to this stream,
You got to clip that out. That's the best part.
I'm probably gonna have to. Yeah. But all right, I think I'm gonna end the stream. I want to thank Spook for coming on at the last leg of it here. I want to thank everybody for watching on Bitwave and DLive and Periscope and YouTube, which I found a workaround so they won't copyright strike me.
Nice.
And as always, if you feel you enjoy this, you think I'm doing a good job, you want to help conservatives, streamlabs.com/theeternalabyss. Any amount of your generosity is appreciated if you feel inclined to do so. Everyone have a wonderful night, and that's it.